Lloyd is a 19-year-old personal mage who has spent years being mistreated by his childhood friend and girlfriend, Ruby. Ruby is a world-famous court alchemist, but behind her public image of kindness, she is a nightmare. She constantly belittles Lloyd, calling him useless and lazy because his material gathering rate is only 40%, the lowest in the kingdom. After Lloyd risks his life to find a rare flower, Ruby calls it trash and throws it away, claiming it isn't fresh enough. Fed up with the daily harassment and being treated like a servant, Lloyd finally reaches his limit. He breaks up with her and quits the atelier. Ruby is so arrogant that she doesn't even take him seriously, assuming he'll be back by dinner to cook for her. Ignoring her, Lloyd packs his things and leaves the capital. He decides to head to a remote town called Minerva, a place so far away that nobody will know his bad reputation. A week into his carriage journey, Lloyd meets a young adventurer couple, Marth the swordsman and Lyra the mage. Suddenly, the carriage is stopped by a massive 20-meter sandworm. The couple panics, thinking it's a dead end, a high-ranking officer of the Demon Lord's army. Marth and Lyra prepare to sacrifice themselves for each other in a dramatic, emotional scene. Lloyd, annoyed by their loud romance and knowing exactly what the monster is, steps in. He explains that it's just a mid-level sandworm, though a very large one. He casually sticks his staff out the window and chants a master-level explosion spell. The massive monster is instantly vaporized. Marth and Lyra are stunned. Their attitude toward Lloyd flips from seeing him as a stranger to treating him like a legendary master. Lyra, who can only use basic magic, is fascinated by his power, while Marth starts calling him teacher. As they talk, Lloyd realizes they genuinely respect him, something he never felt with Ruby. When they ask who he really is, Lloyd hesitates. He knows telling the truth about his past is risky, but seeing their honest faces, he decides not to lie. He prepares to tell them his story, realizing that for the first time, he is being seen for his actual skills rather than his failure. Despite Lloyd's incredible power, Lyra explains the common perception of Ruby. She is viewed as a legendary figure who created masterpieces like the magical marionette and the elixir. Lyra even admits her dream is to become Ruby's personal mage, unaware of the woman's toxic nature. When Lloyd asks if they know who Ruby's current personal mage is, Lyra doesn't hold back. She calls the mage, Lloyd, an incompetent loser with a pathetic 40% success rate, blaming him for every one of Ruby's failures. Lloyd calmly reveals that he is that very same useless mage. The shock is so intense that Lyra literally foams at the mouth and faints. 3 weeks later, the group arrives in Minerva. Unlike the remote village Lloyd expected, it is a thriving town with great infrastructure, guilds, and shops. Over lunch at a cafe, they discuss Lloyd's future. Lloyd lists everything he doesn't want to do. He refuses to be a personal mage, an adventurer, a student, or a researcher. He just wants a simple, high-paying job using magic that doesn't draw attention. Lyra calls his wishful thinking ridiculous, but Marth accidentally insults Lloyd by calling his lifestyle aimless. Lloyd reflexively punches Marth, knocking him out, then immediately uses high-level healing magic to fix him. Lyra is shocked, explaining that healing is usually reserved for those with fairy or elf blood. She reveals she is a half-elf, which explains her own healing skills, but she is stunned that Lloyd has mastered the craft at such a high level. Lyra eventually convinces Lloyd that the Adventurers Guild is his best bet. She argues that it's a merit-based system where his strength will allow him to thrive without being tied down. Most importantly, she helps him realize that he shouldn't pick a career based on fear of Ruby finding him. If he's successful and happy, it doesn't matter if she shows up. He can simply say no to her. They agree to register at the guild the next morning. After a massive buffet dinner where Lloyd overeats just to get his money's worth, Marth and Lyra head to their room. Lloyd, feeling a bit lonely but determined to start his second life, decides to head out into the night to find an open space for magic practice. While walking through the glowing streets, Lloyd is cornered by 3 thugs. They brandish knives and demand money, assuming he's an easy target. Lloyd looks at their scarred, sinister faces and feels no fear, having dealt with similar types in the capital. When the leader threatens him, Lloyd simply tells them that while he has no money, he has plenty of magic to share. "Shall I blast it into your filthy faces?" Lloyd asks the thugs. He warns them that being soft on criminals only makes them repeat their mistakes. The leader, unfazed, presses a knife against Lloyd's cheek, drawing blood. Lloyd doesn't flinch. He uses healing magic to fix the cut instantly and prepares to use physical enhancement magic to end the fight. Before he can strike, a girl appears under the moonlight. She has long silver hair, a revealing white outfit, and a face that looks like it belongs to a goddess. "Your evil deeds end here," she declares. The thugs are immediately distracted by her beauty, making crude comments and planning to kidnap her. The girl introduces herself as Iris, the Saint of Justice. She begins chanting Ice Spear, a high-level spell that would freeze everything, including Lloyd, in a massive area. Realizing Iris has no control over her range, Lloyd takes advantage of the distraction. He disarms the leader with a judo throw and knocks the other two out with lightning, a much faster and more precise spell. Once the thugs are down, Lloyd gives Iris a quick lesson, explaining that while Ice Spear is powerful, it's too slow and dangerous for a street fight. Iris is embarrassed but grateful. As they talk, Lloyd learns that Iris is a saint, a woman chosen by the goddess of order to protect the land's fertility and keep monsters away. However, she reveals a shocking truth. She was banished from her country after being branded a false saint. Even though a new saint has already replaced her, Iris is clearly hurt by the betrayal, despite her claims that she's happy being an ordinary girl dedicated to justice. Lloyd senses her pain and promises not to pry into her past. This kindness touches Iris, and she declares Lloyd her first real friend in this country. When she notices the blood on his cheek from earlier, she steps close, so close Lloyd can feel her breath, and uses holy magic to heal him. The warmth of her power is unlike regular healing. It feels like a divine blessing. The two spend the next hour playfully acting like a prince and princess from a fairy tale, but the mood shifts when Iris admits she's lost. She stormed out of her inn after a fight with her servant, whom she calls a minimalist who obsessed over decluttering. Lloyd offers to walk her back, and when he casually mentions how beautiful she is and how much he enjoys her company, Iris turns bright red. She gets so flustered that she calls him a dense, fraudulent sorcerer, yet she refuses to let go of his hand. She asks to keep holding hands so they don't get separated. Lloyd, trying to keep his cool despite his racing heart, agrees. They wander the streets for a long time, but because they are both so nervous and focused on each other, they don't actually find the inn. It turns into a late-night date. Unbeknownst to them, Marth and Lyra have been tailing Lloyd from the shadows. Lyra, the half-elf mage, wanted to spy on Lloyd's training to figure out how he became so strong. She knows Lloyd is a master-level genius, the highest rank possible, but seeing him casually walk around with a beautiful saint is a development she didn't expect. Lyra, the half-elf mage, continues to watch Lloyd from the shadows. She knows he is a master-level genius, but she is baffled by how he underestimates himself. Lloyd genuinely believes he is terrible at everything because years of verbal abuse from Ruby have warped his self-image. Lyra realizes that Lloyd is currently using 3 high-level stealth spells simultaneously: soundproofing, perception inhibition, and magic power blocking, just to walk around unnoticed, a feat most mages could never achieve. Marth and Lyra watch as Iris, the banished saint, holds Lloyd's hand. Lyra is obsessed with the drama of the situation, imagining a tragic love triangle between the saint, the archmage, and the toxic alchemist ex-girlfriend. Marth finds Lyra's obsession weird, but she ignores him, focused entirely on shipping the couple. As Lloyd and Iris wander, they remain completely lost in their own world, failing to find Iris's inn. Lyra notices they are about to walk past the Adventurers Guild and decides they need a nudge. She takes out a bow and fires an arrow, shattering a window of the guild building. The noise gets Lloyd and Iris's attention, and they head toward the building. The Minerva Adventurers Guild is a large 2-story stone building that stays open 24/7. Inside, the atmosphere is hostile. A group of adventurers led by a bearded swordsman confronts Lloyd and Iris with weapons drawn. They accuse the duo of attacking the guild because Lyra's arrow didn't just break a window. It pinned itself directly into the forehead of a portrait of a legendary hero hanging on the wall. To the guild members, this looks like a deliberate declaration of war. The swordsman refuses to listen to Lloyd's explanation and insults Iris. Lloyd, tired of the nonsense, considers using the magic of irrationality, violence, to settle things, remembering his old master's advice that overwhelming power solves everything. Before a fight breaks out, the guild master, a woman in her early 20s with long golden hair, rushes down from the second floor. The guild master instantly recognizes Iris. She falls to the ground in shock, identifying her as Great Saint Iris, the highest-ranking holy figure. The hostile adventurers are terrified and immediately prostrate themselves. It turns out the guild master was once a holy knight who had seen Iris during morning prayers years ago. Iris shifts into saint mode, acting with a cold, divine authority. She forgives the guild master but demands the rude adventurers be punished. The guild master demotes them all to E rank on the spot. Once the crowd is dealt with, Iris drops the act and returns to her bubbly self. She playfully punishes Lloyd for making her use her saintly authority by demanding he stroke her head as a reward for her hard work. The guild members are horrified to see a random guy casually patting the head of a great saint, assuming Lloyd must be an even more powerful entity. Finally, Lloyd gets a map of the city from the guild master. As they leave, Lloyd reflects on how a simple walk turned into a night of fighting thugs, getting lost, and accidentally causing a diplomatic incident at the guild. Lloyd felt a sense of accomplishment he never had with Ruby. Seeing Iris's innocent smile made him realize he wanted to be more than just a passing stranger to her. He wanted to be a special friend. As they walked toward her inn, Lloyd decided to leave her with one last memorable moment. Looking at the blue glow of the city's magic stones, Lloyd came up with a plan. He used Grow to enhance his physical strength, scooped Iris up in a princess carry, and leaped across the rooftop. He reached the top of the central clock tower just as the sun began to rise. As Iris opened her eyes, she was breathless. The morning light hit the magic stones, turning the city's glow from blue to a shimmering silver that matched Iris's hair. She was deeply moved, giving Lloyd a 120-point score for his effort. However, she playfully pointed out one mistake. By bringing her here, they were now much further away from her inn than when they started. Lloyd felt a bit silly for forgetting the goal, but seeing Iris laugh like a normal girl made it all worth it. After finally dropping Iris off, Lloyd returned to his own inn and crashed. The next morning, he joined Marth and Lyra for a buffet breakfast. Lyra, acting the part of a refined elf, sat with them as they discussed Lloyd's official start as an adventurer. Marth joked that Lyra's elegant exterior was just a mask for her true, messy personality, but Lloyd only saw a sophisticated maid. Lyra gave Lloyd a serious piece of advice. The most important rule for an adventurer is don't die. She told him to run away if a monster was too strong and never take on impossible tasks. Lloyd agreed, respecting her experience. They decided to form a party together. Marth was thrilled to have his mentor join them, and Lyra was excited to see more of Lloyd's high-level magic. As they walked toward the guild, Lyra teased Lloyd, sniffing his clothes and joking that he smelled like a woman's perfume. Lloyd got flustered, thinking about his night with Iris, but Marth stepped in to change the subject. Before entering the guild, Lloyd warned Lyra to be careful. He mentioned that an arrow made with elf-style craftsmanship had smashed a guild window the night before. He didn't want her to be falsely accused just because she was a half-elf. While Marth looked pale with guilt, Lyra remained perfectly calm, even joking that she was a great liar before correcting herself. Lloyd felt good about looking out for his new teammates as they stepped into the guild to begin their first official day of work. Walking down the main street of Minerva, Lloyd finally feels at peace. In the capital, he was constantly mocked, but here, he can walk with his head held high. Marth and Lyra notice his good mood, and Lloyd explains how amazing it feels to live a normal life without fear. Lyra smiles, promising to help protect his new peaceful everyday life. As they reach the central square, screams erupt from the west. A horse-drawn carriage has lost control and is barreling toward the crowded stalls. While the driver panics, Lloyd doesn't hesitate. He rushes forward, using Grow to boost his speed and stands directly in its path. With a quick sleep spell, he instantly calms the horses, followed by a mega sleep to ensure they stay down. The crowd is stunned. A bystander wonders why he didn't just start with a stronger spell, but Lloyd knows that in a crisis, a 2-second basic spell is better than a slow, advanced one. He then notices a woman with a badly broken leg nearby. He uses healing, and in 5 seconds her shattered bone is perfectly mended. The onlookers are in awe, but the situation takes a turn when Marth loudly brags that Lloyd is a master-level mage. The word spreads like wildfire. A group of knights arrives and the leader accuses Lloyd of lying, claiming no one so young could be a master. He demands proof, mentioning that true masters can use item boxes. To the knight's horror, Lloyd casually summons a massive item box. When Lloyd mentions it has a storage capacity of 1,000 items, 10 times more than the kingdom's top sorcerer, the knight literally faints from shock. The other knights immediately flip their attitude, desperately trying to recruit Lloyd and calling him a grand sorcerer. Realizing they've drawn way too much attention, Lloyd, Marth, and Lyra flee into the back alleys. Lyra is the fastest to run, terrified that Lloyd's peaceful life is already ruined. Before fully disappearing, Lloyd spots the distraught carriage driver, who is facing massive debt for the damage. Feeling sympathetic, Lloyd tosses his wallet to the man. It contains 200 gold coins, a fortune that solves all the driver's problems instantly. Once they lose the crowd, Lyra and Marth confront Lloyd. They are speechless that he just gave away 200 gold coins to a stranger. Lyra gives him a serious talk. While his kindness is amazing, he can't save everyone. She tells him his money and power should be reserved for people who actually matter to him. Lloyd realizes his sense of value was warped by the massive amounts of money he earned while working for Ruby, and he promises to be more careful. Lyra also warns them to keep a low profile. If the Adventurers Guild finds out Lloyd is a master-level mage this early, he'll never have a quiet life. They decide to skip the guild for the day and head back to the inn. On the way, Lloyd spots an old fortune teller. The sight reminds him of Ruby, who was obsessed with fortune-telling and used it to dictate everything from her moods to fashion trends, often mocking the elderly practitioners she encountered. Despite the chaos of the morning, Lloyd is determined to keep moving forward, even if his quiet life is proving harder to maintain than he thought. Lloyd has a theory that elderly fortune tellers are the most accurate, as fortune telling is a rare type of magic even he can't perform. Despite Lyra's teasing about his past, with Ruby, Lloyd decides to get his fortune told to mark the start of his new life. He explains to his friends that Ruby actually had no idea he was a master-level mage because he rarely used magic around her, except for simple spells to help her sleep or heal. Lyra is frustrated that Lloyd never stood up for himself or showed Ruby his true power. Lloyd explains that it would have been impossible to take Ruby to his office because he gathered her materials in Area Zero, a place so dangerous that even master-level monsters show up. Since Ruby always stayed in her studio while he did the dangerous fieldwork, she never saw the true scale of his skills. Marth is left speechless by how casually Lloyd talks about surviving a place where most people face certain death. They visit an old woman with a legendary reputation. For just 1 copper coin, she gives Lloyd a reading. His career looks great, but he's going to have major trouble with women. Lyra finds this hilarious, but soon it's Marth's turn. The fortune teller reveals that Marth is deeply in love with Lyra, specifically her smile. While Lyra celebrates and teases him, Marth turns bright red and tries to shut the session down. Lyra then insists on a personality test. While she claims to be refined and kind, the crystal ball exposes her true nature. She's actually rough, judgmental, and will do anything to get her way, often causing trouble for everyone else. She even reads weird books. Lyra is so offended by the accuracy of the reading that she jokingly threatens to blow up the fraudulent old lady, leading to a loud, chaotic argument with Marth in the middle of the street. The next morning, the group prepares to enter the Adventurers Guild. Lloyd wants to go in alone first to keep things low profile, but Lyra convinces him otherwise. She argues that instead of hiding in fear of being discovered, they should just focus on having a fun life together. If things get messy, they'll handle it as a team. Lloyd feels a sense of relief and agrees. Inside the guild, the atmosphere is normal, and the window Lyra broke the night before is already fixed. They meet a friendly receptionist with animal ears who explains how the guild works. It's a massive international organization designed to manage dangerous areas and reduce the workload of the country's saint. Ranks go from E to S, with S-rankers handling the deadliest zones like Area Zero. When it's time for Lloyd to test his abilities on a crystal, he intentionally holds back. He doesn't want to be instantly promoted to S-rank because he wants to enjoy the experience of starting over. He manipulates his magic to show he is an upper intermediate mage, which places him at D rank. To his surprise, the receptionist is still blown away, calling him a genius for reaching that level at his age. Lloyd realizes that even his nerfed version is way above average for a normal person. The staff warns him to stay safe and avoid dangerous high-level zones, unaware that Lloyd has already spent years surviving the very places they fear most. The guild staff hands Lloyd a guidebook titled Monster Rankings Even a Monkey Could Understand, which features a deceptively cute cover, but starts with a warning that reading it carelessly will lead to death. The staff explains that maps and monster updates are posted twice daily at the guild, emphasizing that staying informed is the only way to survive. Currently, the most dangerous spot near Minerva is the summit of the mountains, where a fairy dragon has been spotted. This creature is a legendary monster with insane healing and defense, ranked as a Chronicle-class threat that once wiped out a hero's party. Lloyd promises Lyra he won't go near it, though she clearly doesn't trust his curiosity. Lloyd receives his official adventure card, which acts like a magical tablet showing his rank, stats, and active quests. Marth and Lyra, dropping the teacher title to help Lloyd blend in, spend the next week putting him through rookie training. They teach him the basics of field work, from identifying herbs to maintaining gear. Even though Lloyd is already a master, he listens to every word with genuine gratitude. He realizes that unlike Ruby, who only belittled him, Marth and Lyra actually care about his growth. During one lesson, Marth gets so emotional over Lloyd's kindness that he jokes about wanting to be held by him, which Lloyd quickly shuts down with a laugh. After a week, the duo declares Lloyd's training complete. To celebrate his graduation, they offer him a gift. Lloyd realizes he doesn't want money or items. Instead, he wants to try a solo quest to see if he can handle the world using only his own strength. Lyra pretends to cry like a proud mother seeing her child grow up, but she and Marth genuinely support his independence. Because they are B rank and Lloyd is D rank, guild rules would have made it hard to quest together anyway. They agree to meet back at the guild later, and Lloyd officially begins his independent life. For his first solo mission, Lloyd picks a D rank quest to hunt 10 goblins in the Vid Great Forest. To get there, he pulls out Artemis, a magical horse-shaped doll that moves twice as fast as a real horse and never needs food or rest. This doll was actually made by Ruby, and while looking at it used to trigger his trauma, Lloyd finds he can finally use it without feeling sick. He gallops into the forest, aiming for a 100% success rate. In the forest, Lloyd finds the goblins small, green, unintelligent creatures. He makes short work of them, using ice cannon and cyclone spells to vaporize groups at a time. His adventurer card automatically absorbs the existence power of the fallen monsters to track his kills. While the quest only required 10 kills, Lloyd decides to go for the bonus and takes down 50 goblins in just 20 minutes. He also collects 85 magic stones from the goblins and some aggressive plant monsters he encountered. After finishing the hunt, Lloyd heads to a nearby campsite to spend the night. The staff is shocked that he finished so quickly, but Lloyd keeps his true kill count a secret to avoid drawing attention. He sets up a self-inflating tent by a river and prepares to enjoy the slow life he always dreamed of. Using the firewood techniques Lyra taught him, he starts a fire and begins cooking a stew, feeling peaceful as he realizes that his new life as an adventurer has truly started. Lloyd finished preparing his rhino rabbit and vegetable stew, letting it simmer so the flavors could settle. To pass the time, he sat by his tent, sipping tea and reading a grimoire. The campsite was lively and peaceful, filled with families and rookie adventurers, making it feel more like a picnic spot than a dangerous hunting ground. Suddenly, a loud cry broke the peace. A 6-year-old girl was sobbing because her red balloon had floated high into the clear sky. Lloyd stepped in to help. He combined physical enhancement magic with intermediate wind magic to perform what he called double magic. By creating temporary platforms of air with cyclones, he sprinted through the sky like a lightning bolt, grabbed the balloon, and landed softly. While the crowd stood in shock at magic they had never seen before, Lloyd quietly slipped back to his tent to avoid any unwanted attention. Near the river, Lloyd spotted a silver-haired girl floating downstream. It was Iris, the fake saint he had met before. She was completely soaked, her white clothes becoming see-through. To prevent her from catching a cold, Lloyd used a high-level full recovery spell. This serious magic, which uses 90% of his power, instantly dried her clothes and restored her health. The two shared a warm reunion, hugging after 2 weeks apart. Iris explained that she had been trying to master Water Daedalus, one of the 7 highest-level elemental spells, but lost control and got swept away by her own magic. When she learned Lloyd could already use it, she begged him to teach her. He agreed, and they decided to have lunch together first. Iris shared sandwiches made by her head chef, Nero, while Lloyd served his homemade stew. They spent a happy afternoon feeding each other and talking, which brought back fond memories Lloyd thought he had forgotten. Unbeknownst to them, Iris's attendants were watching from behind a rock. Nero, the chef, was furious and wanted to attack Lloyd for being too close to Iris. He ordered Cephilia, a powerful holy knight disguised as a maid, to strike. However, Cephilia had forgotten her holy sword and brought a radish instead. Before the situation could escalate, the head maid, Tululu, knocked Nero out with a paper fan to maintain the peace. Tululu recognized the name Lloyd and wondered if he was the same mage whose high-quality materials had helped her in the past. If so, she felt she owed him a debt of gratitude. Back at the meal, Lloyd asked Iris why she was so determined to learn such dangerous magic. Iris turned serious, explaining that she wanted to protect her family, her attendants who had abandoned their homes to follow her. She wanted to be strong enough to ensure their happiness until their final breath. Her resolve moved Lloyd, as it reminded him of the promises he once made to his own mentor but failed to keep. After finishing their lunch, Lloyd took Iris further upstream, away from the campsite. He wanted to ensure their training wouldn't disturb others or be seen by other mages, as teaching high-level magic outside of a formal master-disciple relationship was a serious breach of traditional rule. Despite the risks, Lloyd was determined to help Iris achieve her goal. Lloyd decided to teach Iris the ultimate water spell, Water Daedalus. This high-level magic creates a massive water dragon that can wipe out powerful monsters with very little mana. However, it requires a nearby water source and precise control over both internal and atmospheric magic. Lloyd took Iris to a river and demonstrated the spell, summoning a 10-meter-tall water dragon with ease. When Iris tried it, she couldn't maintain the form, and the collapsing magic nearly caused a tsunami that Lloyd had to stop with a physical enhancement punch. To help her, Lloyd explained the concept of external magic, the energy in the air, which Iris had never heard of. He used a rare training method called magical energy matching, where he touched her back and channeled his own power into her body to show her the correct flow. The process was intense and physically draining for Iris, but it worked. She successfully summoned and controlled the water dragon, proving she had the strength to protect her followers. As they were finishing, a masked assassin from a group called Catastrophe emerged from the wood. He claimed that because Iris was a fake saint, her existence was a crime that needed to be erased. He bragged about being the strongest and used a high-speed style called Hawk Sword, moving faster than a normal person could see. Knowing that mages usually lose to such fast opponents, Lloyd took the risk of using master-level physical enhancement magic without an incantation. He moved even faster than the assassin, instantly appearing above him and slamming his head into the ground. Instead of finishing him off, Lloyd put the assassin into a permanent magical sleep and decided to hand him over to the authorities. Iris introduced Lloyd to her head maid, Lulu, a calm and beautiful woman who thanked him for his help. Together, they traveled back to the city of Minerva to report the incident. Meanwhile, Lloyd's former associate Ruby was struggling at her alchemy studio. It had been 3 weeks since Lloyd left, and she realized her business was falling apart. She had always looked down on Lloyd, thinking he was a third-rate mage who failed to gather materials 60% of the time, but without him, she couldn't fulfill any orders. Other mages refused to help her because the materials were too dangerous to get. Because of the missed deadlines, her studio was demoted from rank A to rank B, and she feared she would lose everything if she didn't find a replacement soon. Back in Minerva, Lloyd and Iris met with the guild master, Isolde. She was a sharp, armored woman with a serious attitude. Lloyd learned that Isolde was actually the daughter of the local lord, making her high-ranking nobility. After handing over the assassin to be locked in magic-draining restraints, Isolde assured Iris that the city would protect her. Iris felt relieved, finally feeling safe in the town as she prepared to start her new life. After finishing the paperwork for the assassin, Isolde turned to Lloyd and insisted he was Iris's royal guard maid. Even though Lloyd kept correcting her, saying he was just a regular adventurer, she wouldn't listen and laughed it off before leaving. With his first quest officially over, Lloyd headed to the guild to finalize everything. Iris followed him, curious about his work. As they walked in, her beauty stopped everyone in their tracks, making Lloyd feel practically invisible by comparison. Lloyd successfully completed his quest, earning 50 silver coins and a bonus gold coin. It was a proud moment for him, marking his official start as an independent adventurer. Lyra and Mars were waiting for him at the guild. They acted casual, but Mars quietly admitted they had been worried and wanted to be there the moment he returned. After a quick chat, they headed off to their next job, leaving Lloyd and Iris to enjoy some ice cream together. It was a peaceful moment that made Lloyd feel like everything was finally settling into place. A week later, Lloyd and Iris were summoned to the Minerfort mansion. They were greeted by a butler named Sebastian and led through the massive, beautiful estate to meet Isolde. She shared some news. The assassin Lloyd caught was actually Black Crow, a famous hitman from the Catastrophe Group. He was identified because of his weird habit of ending every sentence with Gajaru, a quirk he used because he wanted to be known as a terrifying figure. Isolde warned Lloyd that the assassin was now completely obsessed with him. Instead of being mad at Iris, Black Crow was furious about losing to Mage and had vowed to kill Lloyd. However, the assassin was being deported to the Crimson Empire, so Lloyd didn't worry too much. The real reason for the meeting was a request from the Queen of Melzelia. She was concerned about Iris being forced out of her role as a saint and wanted to meet her in person. Iris agreed to go but insisted that Lloyd come along for protection. Isolde scheduled the departure for the next day. Lloyd tried to delay it because he had barbecue plans with Mars and Lyra, but Isolde had already cancelled his plans for him, showing a bit of a pushy, scary side. Before leaving, Lloyd met with Mars and Lyra to say goodbye. Since the round trip to the capital would take about 2 months, they had a final meal together. Lyra kept teasing Lloyd, asking if he and Iris had kissed yet, while Mars tried to keep things polite. The next day, a massive convoy of 6 carriages set off. Iris's carriage was placed safely in the middle, guarded by 12 knights. During the 3-week journey, Iris was excited to see the capital for the first time. They shared snacks and enjoyed the view as the mountains replaced the town of Minerva. When they arrived at the Royal Knights garrison in the capital, a crowd was already waiting. The knights were stunned by Iris's beauty, while the guild master officially handed over Black Crow to the authorities. As the assassin was hauled away, Isolde made sure to tell everyone that Lloyd was the one who actually captured him. All eyes turned to Lloyd. Instead of hiding his identity like he used to, Lloyd stood tall. He introduced himself clearly as a former personal mage turned adventurer. Having gained confidence from his time in Minerva, he realized he didn't need to run from his past anymore. He was happy with who he was now. The crowd's mood shifted instantly when they heard Lloyd was a former personal mage. Hostile whispers broke out as the knights accused him of being incompetent and stealing credit for capturing the assassin. One knight even claimed Lloyd had abandoned his previous boss, Ruby, without notice. Lloyd calmly tried to explain that he had officially resigned because he felt he wasn't skilled enough at gathering materials for a genius like Ruby, but the knights refused to listen. They saw him as nothing more than a useless hanger-on. Iris couldn't stay quiet while they insulted her benefactor. She shouted at the knights, defending Lloyd and praising his bravery. Her sudden outburst shocked everyone, including Lloyd, who was touched that she cared so much. Isolde stepped in to back Iris up, scolding the knights for their prejudice. To settle the tension, Isolde suggested a practice match between Lloyd and the Royal Knights, believing that in the world of warriors, a duel speaks louder than words. 30 minutes later, Isolde returned with the knight commander himself. Unlike his subordinates, the commander was a polite, distinguished gentleman who apologized for the rudeness of his men. He offered Lloyd a friendly match, promising to only defend and parry to test Lloyd's magic. Lloyd, showing his respect, decided to go all out using his full glow physical enhancement magic. As the match began, the commander took a specialized defensive stance. However, Lloyd's speed was far beyond what anyone expected. Before the commander could even react, Lloyd landed a massive punch that sent him flying into a wall, knocking him unconscious instantly. The watching knights were stunned into silence. Lloyd immediately used full recovery on the commander. The high-level spell not only woke him up but also healed an old, chronic injury in his left knee. Feeling younger and stronger than ever, the commander was overjoyed. He jokingly offered Lloyd his own seat as commander and then turned to his men with a demon leader grin. He announced that because he felt so good, training would be extended from 8 hours to 16 hours a day. While the knights groaned in despair, Lloyd and his group quietly left the training ground. That evening, they stayed at a luxurious mansion belonging to one of Isolde's friends. After a peaceful dinner, Iris visited Lloyd's room alone to chat. Lloyd opened up about his dangerous past life gathering materials in Area Zero, where he had nearly died many times. In return, Iris finally shared the real reason she was banished from her home. She explained that she used to be very unfriendly because she took her role as a saint too seriously, never smiling and acting only as an agent of her god. This behavior drove away her fiancé, Prince Geese of the Holy Roland Empire. He eventually broke off their engagement, declared her a fake saint, and replaced her. Lloyd comforted her, wiping away her tears and assuring her that he was protecting her by choice, not obligation. This talk brought them much closer, and Iris eventually fell asleep on the sofa, leading Lloyd to carry her back to her maid, Talulu. On their second day in the capital, they met Cornelia, the saint of the Melzelia kingdom. Cornelia, a tall woman with purple hair, was a longtime friend of Iris. She cried when she heard about Iris's struggles and expressed deep anger toward Prince Geese. After the meeting, Lloyd and Iris spent the rest of the day sightseeing and eating strawberry Melzelia pie. By the third day, everyone was preparing for the upcoming meeting with the queen. Isolde revealed that the queen was likely to support Iris staying in the kingdom. The plan was for Iris to act as an auditor for the Southlight region, where Minerva is located. Since the capital is far away, the queen wanted Iris to handle any local issues or spiritual matters in that area, effectively giving her a new, official purpose in her new home. Iris effectively became the manager of the Southlight region, a perfect outcome since she preferred living in Minerva over the capital anyway. When Lloyd asked why she liked Minerva so much, she just blushed, leaving him curious. With their departure set for the next day, Lloyd decided to spend his final day in the capital shopping for supplies and rare magic books for Lyra. While organizing his items, Lloyd found an old note from his former boss, Ruby, asking him to make curry. It reminded him that despite her difficult personality, Ruby was a once-in-a-century alchemy genius. He wondered how she was faring after 2 months without him, though he had no intention of going back. Later that afternoon, Lloyd visited the detention center to see the assassin Black Crow. The prisoner was heavily guarded and gagged. When Lloyd had the gag removed, he was shocked to hear a young girl's voice. It turned out Black Crow was actually a teenage girl named Infa who had been using magic to disguise her voice. Despite her young age, she was a cold-blooded killer with no remorse. When she refused to reveal who hired her, Lloyd used a high-level hypnosis spell called Marionette. Under the spell, Infa became completely submissive. She revealed she was from the Rinenkoku kingdom near the Crimson Empire and admitted her biggest personal worry was her small chest size. More importantly, she confessed that the direct client behind the hit on Iris was Archbishop Geese, the first prince of the Holy Roland Empire. Geese wanted Iris dead to ensure no one could challenge his legitimacy, and because of a deep personal grudge. Lloyd was disgusted that the man who banished Iris was now trying to murder her. After putting Infa into a magical sleep, he left, knowing he finally had the truth. Back at the mansion, Lloyd found Isolde and the head maid, Talulu, in a panic. The Holy Roland Empire had sent a threatening letter. If the kingdom didn't hand over Iris within 3 days, they would face excommunication and a total war. Since Roland is the center of the world's main religion, the Merzelia kingdom stood no chance. They decided to keep the news from Iris for now, fearing she would sacrifice herself to save the country. Lloyd realized that the only way to save Iris and stop the war was to find irrefutable evidence of Prince Geese's crime. If a scandal was proven, Geese would lose his right to the throne. Determined to protect his friend's happiness and his own slow life, Lloyd waited until nightfall and secretly headed to Ruby's old workshop. He used his spare key to enter and found the teleportation circles his master had taught him to use. These circles allowed him to travel instantly to different bases he had set up for material gathering. Using one of these portals, he warped directly to the capital of the Holy Roland Empire. Standing in the heart of enemy territory, Lloyd looked up at the massive Roland castle. He cast several high-level stealth spells on himself to hide his presence, sound, and magic power. Though he felt nervous about infiltrating such a dangerous place, he pushed his fears aside. He wasn't just a low-rate material gatherer anymore. He was an adventurer on a mission to bring back the one thing no one else could, the evidence to take down a prince. Keeping his eyes on the castle's heavy magical barriers, Lloyd prepared to break in. Lloyd reached the massive Roland Castle and faced its masterclass magical barrier. After a quick analysis, he found the formula surprisingly simple, rewrote it, and slipped inside. He felt a bit concerned that the royal family's security was so basic that even he could bypass it easily. Following information he gathered from the assassin in Fa, Lloyd headed toward the top floor of the main building. While the lower floors were easy to navigate, the third floor replaced human guards with expensive magical dolls. These dolls could see through his stealth magic, so Lloyd used his full glow physical enhancement to smash all 30 of them with single punches. On the fourth floor, he encountered a robed mage wearing a white mask. This opponent was top tier, capable of using external magic energy just like Lloyd. The mage unleashed a storm of elemental spells, but Lloyd analyzed the attacks and canceled them out with the exact same magic. Taking advantage of the mage's shock, Lloyd closed the distance instantly and knocked him out with a full power punch. He proceeded to clear the rest of the masked guardians on the floor using the same non-lethal efficiency. Lloyd finally entered Prince Geese's extravagant bedroom and woke him up. Terrified, Geese immediately assumed Lloyd was an agent sent by one of his rival brothers. Lloyd played along with the threat, claiming he was there to eliminate the prince for his crimes. Geese instantly panicked and tried to blame a bishop for hiring the assassin, but Lloyd revealed he already knew the truth from the assassin herself. He bluffed by showing Geese random papers, claiming they were evidence of his personal grudge against Iris. Geese broke down, making pathetic excuses and blaming everyone but himself. When he questioned how Lloyd got past the castle's elite guardians, Lloyd simply demonstrated a punch in the air. The prince was so scared he physically collapsed and wet himself. Seeing his overwhelming advantage, Lloyd made his demand. Geese must never contact Iris again. Geese tried to argue that Iris needed him as her fiancée, but Lloyd shut him down, explaining that Iris had already moved on and was happy. When Geese claimed Iris would be happier with a prince than a mere friend, Lloyd lost his temper. He punched the bedroom wall with such force that the entire castle shook, leaving a massive hole and a pile of rubble. He coldly told Geese that someone who tried to destroy Iris's happiness had no right to speak of it. Completely defeated, Geese signed a formal apology and a blood pact, a contract that would kill him if he ever broke his promise to leave Iris alone and end the threat of war against Melzelia. With Iris's safety guaranteed, Lloyd used his hidden teleportation circles to return to Ruby's alchemy studio at 5 a.m. Knowing these portals were too dangerous if they fell into the wrong hands, he performed a final secret ritual to seal them forever. As he prepared to leave the studio for the last time, he ran into Ruby. She acted as arrogant as ever, assuming Lloyd had failed as an adventurer and come crawling back. Lloyd stayed calm and told her he was only there to pick up something he forgot. Ruby bragged about her new personal mage, Crowley, the top mage from the association, calling him a real talent compared to Lloyd. Instead of arguing, Lloyd handed Ruby a bag containing all the money he had earned while working for her. He explained that he wanted a fresh start and asked her to fix the bad reputation she had given him among the knights, as it was bothering his new life. Ruby, surprisingly, agreed to help. Lloyd noticed the materials her new mage would need were actually quite hard to get without the teleportation circles he just sealed, but he figured a top-tier mage would find a way. After 2 months of tension, Lloyd returned his key, said a final goodbye to Ruby on decent terms, and walked away to continue his own journey. The next morning, Lloyd visits Melzelia Castle for an audience with the Queen. The Queen is a young girl in her early teens who carries herself with a strong-willed and dignified air. She values elegance above all else, and is quick to forgive minor mistakes if the person shows refinement. However, because Lloyd lacks a certain noble flair, the Queen doesn't even remember him from their meeting 6 months ago, jokingly telling him he needs to be more elegant. Despite this, the meeting is a success. The Queen grants Iris and her group permanent residency in the kingdom, officially ending their status as refugees. 2 days later, the group sets out from the capital to return to Minerva. The mood is much lighter now that the threat of assassins is gone. Iris has become more open, actively chatting with the guard knights and shedding the wariness she once felt towards strangers. A week into their journey, they camp on the Catalina Plateau, a vast grassland known for beast-type monsters like red boars. Suddenly, a massive green shadow passes over them. It is the fairy dragon, one of the 5 great dragons. The creature is awe-inspiring and possesses a presence so overwhelming that even Lloyd doesn't sense it until it is right above them. Fortunately, the dragon simply flies toward the Minerva Mountains without attacking. However, its presence causes a panic in a nearby herd of 50 red boars which begin charging toward the camp. To protect the group, Lloyd steps forward. He chants a high-level lightning storm spell, unleashing a massive strike that vaporizes the entire herd in a single shot, leaving a giant crater behind. The knights and Iris are stunned, as they had never seen lightning magic of that scale. The successful hunt provides a massive amount of meat, so Lloyd decides to host a barbecue for everyone. He prepares steaks using a rare condiment from the western continent called Black Thunder. The savory aroma and incredible flavor move the knights to tears of joy. Iris is equally impressed, praising Lloyd's cooking skills. Lloyd realizes that his years of gathering materials for Ruby weren't a waste. They gave him the knowledge to bring happiness to others through things like fine food. 3 weeks later, the group finally arrives back in Minerva. Lloyd stays the night at the mansion of Isolde, the guild master. After a luxurious dinner, he heads to the Marble Hot Springs to relax. Later that night, Iris visits his room to chat. They talk for an hour until Iris let out a big yawn. Instead of going to her own room, she playfully lies down on Lloyd's bed. Lloyd, trying to be a master detective of social cues, assumes she is just too tired to walk and wants a Princess Carrie. He carries her back to her room, but to his confusion, Iris looks deeply displeased and tells him she doesn't know him anymore. Despite the awkward end to the night, Lloyd sleeps well in his 4-poster bed. The next morning, Lloyd prepares to head to the Adventurers Guild. Isolde suggests he rest, but Lloyd insists that a mage's skills decline without practice. In reality, he is completely broke after giving his savings to Ruby and needs to earn money to be truly independent. He picks a D-rank quest to hunt 5 kobolds in the Kokoro Tunnel, a mining area at the foot of the Minerva Mountain. The Kokoro Tunnel is a complex underground system reaching 3,000 meters deep, filled with rare minerals and dangerous creatures. Before leaving, Lloyd runs into Cephilia, Iris's maid and a legendary sword saint. She greets him with her usual grace, and Lloyd finds himself admiring her master-level discipline. He also says goodbye to Iris, who has decided to embrace the unemployed life for a year to recover from her past stress. Meanwhile, back in the capital, Ruby prepares to meet her new personal mage, Crowley. He is the top-ranked mage in the association, a 200-year-old elf who is famously handsome and wealthy. Ruby is thrilled, viewing him as the superior version of Lloyd. When Crowley arrives, his refined features and tall stature immediately win her over. Ruby puts on a fake, domestic personality, offering him homemade cookies and acting like a kind, misunderstood genius. She believes she has finally found a partner worthy of her status. Unaware of the challenges ahead now that Lloyd's secret shortcuts are gone, Crowley took a bite of Alchemia's cookie and visibly stiffened, forcing a smile while claiming it was delicious. He mentioned it had a mild flavor and just the right amount of salt, which confused Alchemia since she hadn't used any salt. She didn't care much about his taste in snacks, though. She was just thrilled to have a superior partner compared to Lloyd. As they talked, Crowley revealed he was actually a former member of the Heroes Party who defeated the Demon King a century ago. Back then, he went by the name Alystra. Alchemia was starstruck. Having a legendary hero as her personal mage would surely skyrocket her status. Crowley explained that he had been working at a small, remote place called Atelier Noir for many years to help the owner's grandson, Noir, but Ruby's invitation finally convinced him to return to the spotlight. Eager to see him in action, Alchemia handed Crowley a recipe for an elixir, a mythical medicine. Crowley's face froze. He pointed out that the main ingredient, the fleur de ancel, only grows in the Vine Grove, a legendary Area Zero, where monsters are so dangerous that 1,000 knights could be wiped out in a single night. He told her it was impossible to gather such things by tomorrow. Alchemia was baffled. Lloyd had always brought back these materials in half a day without complaining. When she tried to give Crowley easier tasks, he explained that even those materials came from Area 1 danger zones that usually required a week of preparation and a full guild team. Crowley concluded that if Lloyd was actually gathering these things alone and quickly, he wasn't incompetent. He was a Chronicle-class mage, a level of power beyond even Crowley himself. Alchemia snapped. She refused to believe Lloyd was special and started insulting Crowley, calling him a coward who probably hid behind the hero during the Demon King fight. She then insulted his former employer, Noir, calling him a third-rate alchemist for running an unknown shop in the middle of nowhere. This was the final straw. Crowley's warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, terrifying anger. He told her that Noir was a hardworking person who had tolerated all his elderly whim, and he wouldn't stay a second longer with someone who insulted his friend. He terminated the contract on the spot and walked out, leaving Alchemia in a panic. To make matters worse, a messenger from the Queen arrived, revealing that the Queen herself had pressured Crowley into joining her. Now, Alchemia faced the terrifying task of explaining to the Queen why she had managed to lose a national hero in a single afternoon. Meanwhile, Lloyd traveled toward the Minerva Mountains on his magical horse, Artemis. In a nearby village, he gathered intel about the Kokoro Tunnel. Locals warned him about an aggressive wyvern spotted recently and advised him to hide rather than fight. Lloyd also met a merchant who offered to trade a very rare item if Lloyd could bring back 10 kobold tails from the tunnel. Since his guild quest already required hunting kobolds, Lloyd happily agreed. As he hiked into the mountains, Lloyd ate a lunch packed by Talulu. He found a small bag of cookies shaped like bears and rabbits made by Iris and Talulu. He could tell they had put a lot of heart into making them, and the simple, sweet gesture motivated him even more. As the elevation rose, Lloyd spotted a harpy with green wings flying above. These rare, fairy-like creatures are usually hunted for their beautiful feathers or captured as pets, making them extremely wary of humans. While Lloyd was observing the scenery, 3 goblins suddenly ambushed him. Impressed by their vitality for attacking so boldly, Lloyd responded by unleashing a massive lightning storm, vaporizing all 3 instantly. The harpy watching from above shrieked in terror at the overkill and flew away as Lloyd continued his journey toward the tunnel. On the mountain path, Lloyd noticed the monster population was heavily skewed toward goblins. While he hoped to find and tame a fluffy direwolf, his thoughts were interrupted by a massive magical energy signature. A wyvern, a notoriously aggressive subdragon, appeared and let out a roar that shook the earth. Although villagers had warned him to hide from this beast, Lloyd decided to handle it head-on. As the massive black creature landed, Lloyd didn't break a sweat. He knew wyverns were weak against lightning. He unleashed the same lightning storm he had used on the goblins earlier, and the wyvern collapsed instantly. Continuing his hike, Lloyd finally reached the Kokoro mine. At the entrance, he followed protocol by checking the environmental readings and noted the safety rules, which prohibited high-level attack magic inside to prevent cave-ins. This meant swordsmen were usually more effective than mages in these tunnels. After recording the data, he used the basic magic shine to light up the pitch-black tunnels and soon encountered his targets, kobold. These dog-headed monsters carry tails that turn into magical spears, which are highly valuable. Lloyd efficiently took down the kobolds using ice cannon and wind magic. Drawing on his experience from his previous job, he quickly butchered the monsters, separating the skins, tails, and meat. He specifically set aside high-quality cuts of meat as a gift for Isolde. After finishing his quota of 10 kobolds, he was attacked by another group on his way out. He used body enhancement magic to punch a kobold into a wall, and the impact accidentally revealed a hidden passage. Though it smelled like treasure, Lloyd decided to leave it for a future trip when he could bring a partner. Meanwhile, Lloyd's friends Lyra and Mars were heading toward the mountains to surprise him. Lyra, who secretly writes fantasy novels about perfect mages and saints, was busy daydreaming until Mars pointed out the trail of destruction Lloyd had left behind. They found the mountain path littered with monster carcasses, all defeated with perfect elemental precision. When they reached the wyvern's body, they were shocked. Normally, it would take 20 A-rank adventurers to kill such a beast. When they finally ran into Lloyd, he casually confirmed he had soloed the dragon because it attacked him. Lyra was left in awe, realizing Lloyd was a true master. 2 weeks later, Lloyd was back in Minerva, having made a fortune from the wyvern materials. While at the guild, Isolde handed him a pink letter with a royal seal. The queen had personally requested that Lloyd and Iris travel to the great tomb of the faraway world to purify the land. Lloyd was confused as to why he was the only guard assigned to a national treasure like Iris, but Isolde hinted that the queen became interested in him after hearing about the wyvern incident. Lloyd and Iris arrived at the massive cemetery where a dangerous purple mist indicated that a curse was spreading. As Iris began her purification ritual, a giant magic circle covered the entire area. Iris warned that the process would attract monsters, and almost immediately, dozens of night kobolds and goblins rushed from the forest. Lloyd wiped them out with Ice Spear, but a second, larger wave of 40 high orcs appeared. Realizing simple spells wouldn't be enough for this many targets, Lloyd prepared to use a magic combo, fusing water and earth magic to deal with the crowd. Lloyd turned the ground under the high orcs into a swamp, trapping them instantly. Once they were stuck, he bombarded them with a massive barrage of fire, water, earth, and wind magic, wiping out the entire group. More monsters like shadows kept appearing, but Lloyd cleared them all out with ease. Suddenly, he felt a massive energy signature coming from the forest. He realized it was a no-life king, a dangerous undead boss that can revive other monsters. To end things quickly, he fired 20 master-level explosion spells toward the source. The forest turned into a sea of fire, and Lloyd finished it off with his strongest spell, Royal Cyclone, creating a massive fire tornado. The monster's energy vanished completely. Lloyd used a heavy rain spell to put out the forest fire and looked back to see Iris standing there, stunned by his power. With the purification complete, the area was safe again. Iris thanked him for his help and asked if he would accompany her on future quests since he made her feel so safe. Lloyd agreed, especially since the pay was great, The government was paying him 100 gold coins just for an hour of work. He realized that living as an adventurer and helping the saint was a pretty good life. Back at the mansion in Minerva, Lloyd headed to the kitchen to make a special pie he had promised. There, he met Talulu, the quiet and caring maid. While they talked, Lloyd realized Talulu and Iris were more like sisters than servant and master. Talulu thanked Lloyd for protecting Iris, and the three of them began chatting casually. Lloyd gave Iris a gift he had picked up from a merchant, a cute rabbit hood with floppy ears. Iris loved it and started bouncing around happily. Lloyd joked that if he were a wolf, he'd gobble her up, which made her blush. Talulu watched the bunny ears intently, so Lloyd let her try the hood on too. Even the serious maid couldn't hide a small smile while wearing the ears. During their tea, Lloyd asked Talulu if they had met years ago in the country of Roland. Talulu explained that while they hadn't met in person, she had once sent a desperate request to Ruby's shop. She had been trying to save a friend from magic stone disease, a condition that slowly turns the body into stone. Lloyd remembered the letter. He had been so moved by it that he worked extra hard to gather the rare materials for the cure. He was happy to find out that the person he helped back then was the same Talulu standing in front of him. From Talulu's perspective, life in Roland had been much harder. Back then, Iris was a distant masked saint who wasn't allowed to talk to commoners. Talulu was just a regular maid with no money and no way to ask the saint for a miracle. When her friend Sapphire got sick, Talulu sent every penny she had to Ruby's shop as a last resort. To her shock, Lloyd had gathered the legendary ingredients, crafted the elixir, and delivered it across the border in just one day. Knowing that Lloyd was the hero who saved her friend long ago made her even more grateful to have him around now. That night, Talulu looked back on her past in the Roland Empire, remembering how she was once a simple maid with a dying friend. She still treasures the 2 letters Lloyd sent her back then, one accepting her desperate request and another filled with genuine encouragement. To her, Lloyd isn't just a skilled mage. He's the hero who saved her world when the saint's magic couldn't help. The next day, Lloyd decided to take Iris out for a change of pace. Since she had been lounging around the mansion, he suggested a trip to the Vid Great Forest for a mushroom punch man hunt. It was a simple quest involving mushroom-like monsters that try to punch you, making it the perfect light exercise. Before leaving, they stopped at a local diner for a tonkatsu meal. The crispy, juicy pork with fruity Minerva sauce was a massive hit with Iris. At the carriage station, they ran into Mars and Lyra, who were heading to the same forest for an Allron hunt. Since they were going to the same area, they decided to team up and camp together. On the way, Mars explained that Allrons are plant-type monsters that use paralyzing pollen and tentacles to fight. Lyra jokingly mentioned they act like dominatrixes with their whips, a comment that confused the innocent Iris. Lloyd had to quickly explain it away as elegant whip-wielding to avoid a very awkward conversation. After a 3-day journey, they reached the forest. Lloyd noted that plant-type monsters like Allrons are far more dangerous than beasts because they absorb the land's curses, which boosts their intelligence and healing powers. To prepare for the fight, Lloyd offered to cast support magic. Lyra and Mars expected a standard buff, but Lloyd accidentally layered 13 different high-level spells on Lyra, including immunity to poison, mind control, lightning, and even automatic magic reflection. He was about to add 350 more layers before they stopped him, terrified by his overkill. Thanks to Lloyd's rain magic, which washed the paralyzing pollen out of the air, and his massive buffs, Lyra obliterated the Allron with a basic ice spell. No one was hurt, and the group moved on to collect the honey orbs the monster dropped. These orbs were buried in a massive bulb that weighed as much as 3 men. When the others wondered how to transport it, Lloyd casually lifted the entire barrel with one hand. He claimed he was just a hidden muscle man into weight training, but Iris accidentally let it slip that he was actually using grow magic to boost his strength. As they exited the forest, they were spotted by an A-rank mage named George. George was part of a famous party and had heard rumors that Lloyd was just an incompetent runaway. He planned to teach Lloyd a lesson to impress Iris, but his confidence shattered when he saw Lloyd carrying the massive barrel like it was a feather. Suddenly, a 20-meter-tall orc general emerged from the woods, sending the nearby adventurers into a panic. Before George could even react, Lloyd calmly pointed his staff and deleted the giant monster with a single explosion spell. George immediately changed his tune, pretending he had only run over to warn Lloyd about the danger. He realized right then that the rumors were wrong. Lloyd wasn't incompetent, he was a masterclass mage. After the battle, the group split the loot. The honey orbs were worth a fortune, and Lloyd received a double share for his massive support role. Feeling a sense of growth, he accepted the fair pay without his usual modesty. To celebrate, the group decided to make a Merzelia-style pork curry for lunch. After the meal, Lloyd began working on a special dessert, carefully melting down 30 honey orbs into a rich, sweet paste to make treats for everyone. Lloyd didn't stop at just making syrup. He mixed Minerva flour, eggs, and honey to create fresh donuts. After deep frying them, he served the honey-filled treats to the group. Iris was so energized by the taste she joked about building a castle in a single night, while Mars and the others compared the quality to a high-end restaurant. Following a perfect day of fishing and camping, Lloyd returned to the city feeling accomplished, only to realize he had made a massive blunder. He found a forgotten paper in his pocket. He had completely overlooked his original quest to hunt mushroom punchmen. With the deadline only 2 days away and the forest a week's journey back, Lloyd had to rush back on his magical horse, Artemis, barely completing the mission in time. He vowed to never let others' requests distract him from his own work again. Meanwhile, in the capital, the assassin Black Crow, whose real name is Infa, remained obsessed with Lloyd. Her defeat had shattered her loyalty to her former leader. Now her only goal was to find Lloyd and reclaim her honor as a warrior. Using her demonic eye, she easily shattered her magical restraints and walked out of her cell, knocking the guards unconscious without killing them. As she gathered intel, she was annoyed to hear the public describe Lloyd as an incompetent mage, feeling that his bad reputation insulted her own strength since he had beaten her. Infa eventually tracked down Alchemia's workshop, where she found the alchemist arguing with a royal messenger. Alchemia was faking a stomach ache to avoid meeting the queen, desperate because she had no mage to help her complete her tasks. Infa knocked out the messenger and threatened Alchemia for information on Lloyd. Alchemia simply went on a delusional rant, claiming Lloyd was useless and that he had abandoned her. Realizing Alchemia was mentally unstable, Infa watched in horror as the alchemist began smashing her own equipment with a wand, screaming like a madwoman. Terrified by Alchemia's insanity, Infa fled the shop, more desperate than ever to find the relatively normal Lloyd. Back in Minerva, Lloyd noticed that people were acting strange around him. Adventurers would scream and run away, or the crowd would part like the sea when he walked by. He asked Mars for advice over a steak dinner. Mars explained that the Orc General incident had terrified everyone. Lloyd had casually vaporized a monster that usually required an entire army to stop. Because Lloyd treated a high-level threat like a giant pig, the local adventurers now viewed him as a terrifying, masterclass monster in human form. Lloyd was horrified to realize he was being seen as a shady powerhouse who steals everyone's prey. Mars suggested that Lloyd should try teaching magic to others to bridge the gap, but Lloyd worried that a D-rank adventurer acting like a teacher would only make people hate him more. Mars promised to come up with a better social plan by the time Lloyd hit C-rank. To reach that goal, Lloyd immediately applied for his promotion exam. The task was to hunt 10 skull warriors in the Kokoro Tunnel, monsters the guild considered dangerous, but Lloyd had previously mistaken for low-level fodder. He accepted the challenge, ready to officially move up the ranks. Lloyd arrived at the Adventurers Guild to finalize his C-rank promotion exam. A white-haired receptionist with animal ears explained that the test involved hunting 10 skull warriors in the Kokoro Tunnel. Unlike lower ranks, he was allowed to bring a party, but a knight would act as a proctor to score his performance. Lloyd, usually a solo player due to his social awkwardness, felt a mix of relief and pressure. He was confident in his skills, but worried that his personality might be judged, though the receptionist assured him that the guild prioritized combat ability and knowledge over social grace. On the day of the exam, Lloyd was surprised to find Cephilia, Iris's elegant maid and a legendary sword saint, waiting for him. She greeted him formally as if they were strangers, likely to avoid any rumors of favoritism. As they headed to the mountains by carriage, the act dropped, and Cephilia admitted she was helping the local lord as a knight. However, she was completely clueless about how to be an examiner. Lloyd ended up teaching his own proctor her job, explaining that she needed to observe his combat efficiency and knowledge. Cephilia, being polite but often absent-minded, took this as mental training and regained her confidence, even though the roles were essentially reversed. Upon entering the Kokoro mine, Lloyd checked the environmental sensors. The magical energy concentration was 10 times higher than normal, suggesting a massive monster was nearby. As they moved deeper, they encountered kobolds. Lloyd easily vaporized one with a flame arrow, earning constant praise from Cephilia, who seemed more like a supportive friend than a strict judge. The path eventually opened into a massive mining site where dwarves worked on complex aerial railways. A grumpy dwarf mistook Lloyd for a local laborer and yelled at him to get to work. Rather than arguing, Lloyd and Cephilia ignored the distraction and continued. Suddenly, a massive earthquake shook the cavern, and a 15-meter-long sandworm erupted from the ground. Its skin had turned purple from consuming rare amethyst, making it a major threat to the mine's structural integrity. Since high-level explosion magic was banned inside the tunnels to prevent cave-ins, Lloyd got creative. He used full grow to enhance his physical strength and leaped onto a moving minecart. Timing his jump, he dived toward the beast and used enchantment to wrap his staff in wind magic, forming a 3-meter-long greatsword of wind. With the help of gravity, he split the sandworm's head open, causing the creature to dissipate into magical energy. The dwarves, who had been fleeing in terror, gathered around Lloyd to cheer for him, realizing he had just saved their entire operation. This heroic act earned Lloyd the respect of the dwarf community, a connection that would prove valuable later. However, the battle had a side effect. Lloyd's shortcut jump had landed them on the 35th basement floor, since the Skull Warriors for his exam only appeared on the 3rd floor. He realized he had accidentally bypassed his objective and now faced a long climb back up. As they navigated back with a dwarf guide, the group encountered a Skull Sword Master, a much stronger, higher-ranking version of his target. Sephilia noticed Lloyd had used a lot of energy on the sandworm and offered to step in. She suggested that restoring his magical power was the priority and asked for his permission to handle the elite monster herself. Lloyd, recognizing her kindness and wanting to see the Sword Saint in action, decided to take a break and let her lead the way. Lloyd handed the baton to Sephilia, eager to see the legendary Sword Saint in action. Their opponent was a 3-meter-tall Skull Sword Master with 6 arms, each wielding a blade. While the monster unleashed a fierce rain of slashes, Sephilia remained calm, parrying every strike with graceful, refined movement. With a single lightning-fast blow, she cut the giant in half. Despite her overwhelming strength, she remained modest, thanking Lloyd for the chance to fight. As they continued through the Kokoro tunnel, Lloyd noticed the monster balance was completely broken. High-level creatures like high orcs were appearing on floors where they shouldn't exist. Realizing he couldn't find the specific targets for his C-rank exam, Lloyd decided to postpone the promotion. On their way out, he remembered the hidden passage he had found earlier and invited Sephilia to explore it with him. Using his physical enhancement magic, Lloyd punched through the wall, shattering the entrance to the secret route. Mapping the area as they went, Lloyd and Sephilia acted as a coordinated team. At one point, Sephilia stepped on a trap that restrained her with silver chains, emphasizing her figure in a way that momentarily distracted Lloyd. After he freed her with wind magic, his search spells revealed a shocking 100 traps nearby, suggesting something extremely valuable was being guarded. They eventually reached a massive underground lake and after a short break, arrived at a city-sized arena guarding a giant gate. A 3-headed Cerberus stood as the gatekeeper, chained to the door. Working in perfect harmony, Lloyd used earth magic to create a swamp that ruined the beast's balance, allowing Sephilia to close in and deliver a one-hit kill. Beyond the gate, they found a magnificent palace created by masterclass spatial magic. Sitting on a throne was a 10-year-old girl with pink hair and deer antlers. She introduced herself as Albatross, the demon lord who once plunged the world into terror. Before she could finish her grand speech, Sephilia punched her in the head, knocking her out instantly. When the girl woke up 31 minutes later, she was furious about the cowardly surprise attack. Lloyd had her restrained using blue slime, which immobilized her while also cleaning the dirt off her skin. Although she claimed to be the greatest demon lord in history, her stomach rumbled loudly, betraying her hunger. Lloyd decided to use yakiniku torture to get information. He had Sephilia set up a griddle and cook high-quality hornbill meat right in front of the starving girl. The demon lord tried to act tough, claiming demons don't need food to survive, but she couldn't stop drooling at the delicious smell. Lloyd eventually released her restraints and invited her to eat, turning the interrogation into a duel of flavors. He told her that if the food made her tongue rumble, he won. The girl, now surprisingly cheerful and impressed by her smooth skin thanks to the slime, accepted the challenge. She grabbed a pair of chopsticks and prepared to taste the meat, determined not to let the delicious yakiniku break her resolve. The demon lord, Albatross, completely crumbled under the torture of grilled beef. She was so blown away by the taste and the garlic sauce that she surrendered instantly. To finish her off, Sephilia brought out the ultimate weapon, freshly cooked white rice. The combination was too much for the starving girl, and she admitted defeat, agreeing to tell them everything. Albatross explained that she had been defeated by heroes a century ago, but not in this mine. She was mysteriously revived only a month ago in a hidden spatial pocket. Realizing she was trapped by a magical seal, she tried to signal her allies, but no one came. Eventually, she used teleportation magic to escape, ending up in the mine by pure luck. She didn't actually hate humans, she just saw being a demon lord as a fun job and was open to starting another war simply because she liked the prestige of the throne. It became clear she was more of a bratty figurehead than a calculated monster. However, she was saddened to realize 100 years had passed and her old friends had likely forgotten her. Seeing her as a potential ally rather than a threat, they decided to keep her comfortable. Instead of a cell, they set up a fancy bed and furniture for her in the hidden space. They planned to consult Isolde, the lord's daughter, on how to handle a retired demon lord. A week later, with the mind back to normal, the promotion test was successful. After defeating a Skull Warrior, the goal of reaching C rank was finally achieved. Iris was thrilled and even suggested a massive celebration, including a parade and a choir. To keep things simple, it was decided to just have a small party at a cafe run by Nero, Iris's personal chef. When they visited the cafe to set things up, they found the place empty and the curtains drawn. Hearing strange noises from the back, they peeked into a room and saw Nero frantically stabbing a straw doll with nails, chanting curses about meteorites and wanting to destroy the world. Shocked by his mental breakdown, they quietly backed out and left, deciding to pretend they saw nothing. On the walk back, Iris teased about her priest hat being a snack container before getting serious and holding hands, asking for protection. It was clear their relationship was shifting from friends to something more romantic. 2 weeks passed as a C-rank adventurer. A new urgent quest appeared on the guild board. A massive meteorite had randomly struck and destroyed the Luminous Ranch. The ranch was vital for the city's food supply, and the Minor Fort family was paying top dollar for reconstruction help. Iris appeared and joked that Nero was the culprit, given his meteorite chanting from 2 weeks ago. While they didn't think he actually had the power to call down space rocks, the timing was definitely suspicious. Regardless of the cause, they decided to take the job to help the ranch. As they talked, other male adventurers nearby tried to copy the kind hero act to impress Iris, but she only had eyes for her companion. With the quest accepted, they headed out to help rebuild the ruined ranch. The male adventurers nearby started fighting each other to impress Iris, but she ignored their vulgar behavior. Her focus was entirely on the milk shortage caused by the meteorite strike at Luminous Ranch. Since milk is a staple for local households and necessary for the meals they prepare for the Demon Lord, restoring the ranch became the top priority. Iris decided to join the Holy War rotation, the daily visits to the Demon Lord, to lighten the workload. To help with the ranch reconstruction, it was decided to recruit dwarves, who are experts in construction. Isolde, the guild master, warned that dwarves are notoriously difficult to deal with, but after hearing about the previous encounter with the sandworms, she authorized the mission to persuade them. On the way to the mountain village, Iris and her companion shared a peaceful carriage ride. They discussed the long commute to the Demon Lord's hidden floor and the possibility of finding an alchemist to create a teleportation portal. While the only known expert is the problematic Ruby, Iris hinted that she'd be happy to simply live in the village together. Upon arrival, they ran into Sephilia, who was heading to the mine for her shift with the Demon Lord. After learning about the ranch crisis, Sephilia offered to take over the Demon Lord's supervision entirely so the others could focus on the reconstruction. In the hidden palace, Sephilia engaged the Demon Lord, Albatross, in a wooden sword spar. Despite being a legendary figure, the Demon Lord's skills were basic, and Sephilia easily spotted 3 fatal weak points. However, following the fair play rules of their interaction, Sephilia held back. After winning, she extracted a top secret from Albatross. The Commander Durandal is actually a shy Dullahan who hides his face behind a helmet. Sephilia maintained her professional maid persona, rejecting the Demon Lord's offer to serve her. To improve the quality of their time, she used spatial magic to create a grand open-air hot spring using the underground lake. While soaking together, Albatross revealed a shocking truth. She is an immortal phoenix who has reincarnated 6 times. She explained that the labels of divine beast or demon are just human definitions based on whether a creature helps or hurts them. The next morning, the situation took a turn. Sephilia, who hadn't been sick since childhood, caught a severe fever after her long soak in the springs. Tululu, the head maid, arrived to find her weakened and forced her to stay in bed. Despite Sephilia's guilt over missing her shift, Tululu ordered her to rest, leaving the responsibility of the next Holy War session to Isolde. The Holy War rotation for the Demon Lord completely fell apart because everyone assumed someone else was doing it. With Sephilia sick in bed, the hidden palace was left unattended, but the group was too focused on the ranch crisis to notice. Arriving at the mine, the air and magic levels were normal. Iris wanted to prove herself and handled a group of kobolds, but she accidentally used high-level ice magic that almost caused a cave-in. After a quick warning about not collapsing the tunnels, they moved deeper and spotted a cluster of bloody melons, cactus-like plants with delicious sweet fruit. They decided to save the harvest for later and pushed on to the mining site. The mining floor was massive, with about 50 dwarves working through the night. They found a dwarf who had helped during the previous promotion exam, and he luckily owed the group a favor. He led them to the Elder, a small dwarf with a thick white beard. The Elder was impressed by the bold request to borrow every single dwarf for the ranch reconstruction and agreed to help, but one muscle-bound dwarf, the world champion, refused to cooperate unless strength was proven. The champion challenged the group to dwarf wrestling, a wrestling match where the goal is to push the opponent out of a circle. He allowed the use of enhancement magic as a handicap. Using a physical boost spell, the match began. The champion unleashed a flurry of slaps, but they were all easily parried. Exhausted, the dwarf tried a final dwarf tackle. By nimbly dodging and giving him a light slap on the back, the champion lost his balance and tumbled out of the ring. Impressed by the technique, the dwarves cheered and fully committed to the mission. On the way out, they stopped to harvest the bloody melons. After carefully cutting off the long thorns with wind magic, they sliced one open to reveal vibrant red flesh. Iris loved the sweet taste, and a few more were packed away for future cooking. Back in the city, Isolde was thrilled with the news of the Dwarf Alliance, even squeezing hands in excitement. The next day, 100 adventurers gathered at the guild for the restoration of Luminous Ranch quest. Mars and Lyra joined the group, with Mars praising the successful dwarf negotiations as a heroic act. Lyra, being her usual teasing self, joked about wind spirits and the men's motivation. The male adventurers were clearly only working hard to impress Iris, who promised to cheer them on with all her might. Isolde took charge as the site supervisor, giving a long lecture on the project details while Lyra got scolded for not paying attention. Shortly after, the massive caravan set off toward the ranch. Everyone traveled on foot to keep the group together and maintain morale. While the work couldn't fully start until the dwarves arrived in 2 days, the atmosphere felt more like a festival than a job, with everyone united to save the city's food supply. As the journey continued, the trees thinned out into a vast grassland. A pack of about 50 goblins, including wolf-riding cavalry known as goblin riders, spotted the group from a distance. The riders showed high mobility but chose not to attack, realizing they were outnumbered. The first day of travel ended peacefully. The next morning, the group came across a large herd of cows grazing in the fields. These were the livestock that had been released before the meteorite hit to keep them safe, and Iris was visibly relieved to see them healthy. By noon, they reached the impact site. The area was a scorched wasteland, with a massive 10-meter meteorite buried in the center of a 3-kilometer crater. The sight was so depressing that some adventurers began to cry. Suddenly, a loud, mocking laugh broke the silence. A 5-meter-tall golem appeared, carrying a girl with long black braids and a gothic dress. She introduced herself as Noir, the genius alchemist and leader of the Luminous Guild. Her grand entrance was immediately ruined when a random adventurer started screaming about losing his pet beetle. The entire group ignored Noir to search for the insect, which Lyra eventually found under a carrot. Noir was furious at being ignored and snapped when she was accidentally called Stag Beetle because of her braids. It turned out she was an old acquaintance of Isolde. Although Noir acted haughty and claimed she didn't care about the reconstruction, her red ears and rapid-fire excuses made it obvious she was a tsundere who actually wanted to help. She bragged that her city, Luminous, was unaffected because they used alchemy to manage their livestock, and she even teased Isolde for being an unreliable leader. Noir was about to offer a high-level land restoration potion she had developed, but Iris cut her off with a passionate speech. Iris promised to use her holy magic to fix the land and rallied the adventurers' spirits. Seeing everyone cheer for Iris and Isolde, Noir felt defeated, threw a parting insult, and retreated in tears. With morale high, the reconstruction began. That night, the group bonded over a meal of pork miso soup. Later, Isolde approached for a private talk. She was worried about the technical side of leveling the uneven, rocky ground. Since the dwarves were arriving soon, the suggestion was made to treat them as equals and organize a dwarflessling tournament to win their respect. Isolde loved the idea and, in a rare soft moment, asked to be called by her first name instead of guild master, marking a shift in their friendship. When the dwarves arrived, the wrestling tournament was a huge success. The dwarves took charge of the heavy labor, and their architectural expertise made the work move much faster. However, a new problem surfaced: the muscle craze. After Iris casually mentioned that men carrying heavy lumber looked cool, the male adventurers went wild trying to impress her. They started chugging muscle-enhancing drugs, skipping work to lift weights, and challenging everyone to magic battles to show off their strength. The sight turned into a chaotic mess of ego, forcing a polite refusal of a fight just to get back to the actual job. The A-rank adventurer who challenged Lloyd was far from convinced by his refusal. He was furious that a cocky newbie like Lloyd was on first-name terms with Lady Isolde, a privilege he had never earned. His challenge was fueled by pure jealousy. Lloyd, however, simply ignored the muscle-brained fighters constantly trying to pick a fight. Later that evening, he discussed the situation with Mars and Lyra. While Lyra laughed hysterically at his predicament, Mars was more sympathetic, suggesting that being approachable wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Lyra jokingly advised Lloyd to accept the duels and just take half their money, pointing out the magic battle rule where the winner claims half the loser's gold, a shady but common practice in the lawless world of adventurers. 2 weeks later, the reconstruction of Luminous Ranch was moving fast. Livestock sheds were finished, and animals began returning in droves. With the heavy work settling down, Isolde granted everyone a day off. Lloyd, Iris, Mars, and Lyra spent their holiday exploring the rebuilt ranch. They visited the barns to watch the cows eat, and Lloyd teased Iris by feeding her a macaron like she was one of the animal, which she found both annoying and sweet. They eventually tried their hand at milking cows. Under the guidance of a ranch hand, Iris struggled at first, accidentally squirting milk onto her own face, but eventually got the hang of it and loved the experience. Lloyd also took a turn, feeling a bit nostalgic about his past memories of farming. The group ended the morning by drinking fresh, sweet milk straight from the source and feeding carrots to goats. For lunch, they enjoyed a rich, creamy white stew made with the ranch's first fresh milk delivery. During the meal, Mars teased Lyra about her dark past as a solitary forest guardian who used to threaten humans with arrows, a memory that made the now-friendly elf turn bright red with embarrassment. In the afternoon, they discovered a shooting gallery minigame the ranch was setting up for tourists. The challenge involved hitting 30 targets while riding a horse, with limited arrows. The employees running the game were secretly bitter, setting the targets at nearly impossible angles to humiliate happy couples. Mars went first and scored a mediocre 12 points, falling victim to the rigged setup. Lloyd, seeing the employees mocking Mars, decided to avenge his friend. Although he missed his first few shots to get a feel for the bow, Lloyd's experience casting spells from horseback kicked in. He calculated the perfect route and hit every single target, finishing with a perfect score of 30. The stunned employees collapsed in disbelief while Lyra, impressed by his archery, jokingly tried to recruit Lloyd as a forest guardian for her village. Lloyd won 2 cow plushies and gave them to Iris and Lyra, making them both incredibly happy. By the end of the month, Luminous Ranch was fully restored, and regular milk shipments resumed to the city. A week later, Lloyd returned to the ranch for a private sightseeing trip with Cephilia, who had requested to visit. She traded her maid outfit for a simple kimono and skirt, looking like a normal town girl. They visited the rabbit house, where the usually stoic Cephilia completely lost her composure over the fluffy animal. She was quickly surrounded by 30 rabbits, even letting one sit on her head. Lloyd tried to join in, but instead of a cuddle, a rabbit bit his finger when he offered a carrot. They also visited the impact site, where the massive meteorite had been turned into a tourist attraction. When Lloyd joked that Cephilia could probably slice the space rock in half, she seriously replied that she couldn't, unless Lloyd was standing behind her to support her. That night they stayed at the ranch house and shared a quiet dinner. The next morning, Lloyd found Cephilia outside practicing her sword swings at dawn. During their conversation, she suffered a small coughing fit. She admitted that ever since her severe fever a month ago, she had been getting sick more easily. Lloyd noticed she was still struggling to manage her own health despite her incredible discipline. Concerned that the chilly morning air would make her relapse, Lloyd insisted she stop training and rest, even offering to carry her wooden sword back to the room for her. After the trip to the ranch, Cephilia and Lloyd returned to the city. Cephilia expressed how much she enjoyed being a normal girl for a day, and they promised to hang out again soon. Meanwhile, Ruby, the alchemist who had previously treated Lloyd like garbage, was in a mess of her own making. To escape the queen's anger over her failing studio in the capital, she had faked an attack, destroyed her own equipment, and fled to the port town of Melport. She spent her days trying to find a new mage to replace Lloyd, but she was shocked to find that every other mage was incompetent compared to him. She realized that while she had called Lloyd useless, he was actually the only one capable of gathering the rare materials she needed. She decided she would humbly let Lloyd work for her again as a last resort once she found where he was hiding. Ruby's search for Lloyd was blocked by a massive magical storm at sea caused by the water spirit, Undine. This storm had stopped all ships for 2 months, cutting off the island from the mainland. Ruby went to the local Adventurers Guild and demanded they kill Undine immediately so she could travel. When the staff explained that Undine lived in a danger zone and no one was strong enough to face her, Ruby threw a tantrum. She insulted the adventurers, calling them uneducated thugs. This backfired spectacularly. The adventurers snapped and began roasting her, calling her a talentless ghost who couldn't even make a simple potion without Lloyd's help. The situation for Ruby went from bad to worse when she saw the daily newspaper. It featured a massive expose titled "The Truth About the Genius Alchemist," filled with terrible testimony. Her former business partner, Crowley, called her a human nightmare. Isolde praised Lloyd as the best mage she'd ever seen, implying Ruby was the problem. Even an assassin who had visited her studio claimed she was so crazy it gave him the chills. While Ruby was fuming over the article, 4 royal knights suddenly surrounded her table at a cafe. They weren't there to ask nicely anymore. The queen had ordered her arrest. Panicking, Ruby tried to escape through a tiny bathroom window. Her backpack stuffed with over 12,000 gold coins got stuck in the frame. In her desperate struggle to pull it through, the bag ripped open. Thousands of gold coins rained down into the alleyway as the knights burst in. As she ran away empty-handed, the knights shouted that the rumors were true and labeled her a power-harassing alchemist. By the end of the day, Ruby was a wanted criminal across the entire kingdom. Unaware of Ruby's downfall, Lloyd was busy planning a beach trip to Kaleido Beach. He was determined to see Iris in a swimsuit and had cleared his entire schedule for the week to make sure it happened. He headed to the Minor Fort mansion to invite her, where he was greeted by Cephilia. She had fully recovered and was back to her elegant maid duties. Lloyd noted that Cephilia was surprisingly well-educated, even knowing obscure historical theories about dragons and goblins. Cephilia quickly checked with Iris and led Lloyd inside, where he prepared to finally ask her out for their summer getaway. Lloyd arrived at the mansion and found Iris having tea in her room with Talulu. Despite the elegant setting, Iris was in a blunt, casual mood, which Lloyd took as a sign that she was in high spirits. He presented her with a box of artisanal donuts, which she happily accepted. While they sat, Lloyd noticed a newspaper on the table with a headline about alchemia, Ruby causing such a scene that even the king was in tears. Lloyd ignored the gossip, realizing his ties with Ruby were truly over. When Lloyd officially invited Iris to the beach in 3 days, she immediately agreed, noting she only had a brief church service that morning. However, Tululu stepped in with a reality check. That day was actually Iris's scheduled turn for the Holy War visit to the Demon Lord. It turned out Iris had been so distracted by the newspaper's comics that she hadn't listened to Tululu's morning briefing. As they tried to reschedule, they realized Iris's calendar was a mess. Despite her claim of being unemployed, she had reflexively accepted every minor request from the townspeople, filling her schedule for the entire month. Cecilia offered to cover the shift, but Tululu refused to spoil Iris further. Looking at the rotation, Lloyd was shocked to see Cecilia was already doing almost all the work because Iris and Isolde were too busy. To fix this, Lloyd offered to swap his future shifts with Cecilia's, freeing up Iris for the beach trip while keeping the workload fair. At noon, Lloyd headed toward the mountains for his own Demon Lord shift. He stopped at the guild to pick up a direwolf hunting quest and ran into Isolde. She informed him that in 12 days, they would be doing a joint investigation of the Great Tomb with experts from Lumina. After their chat, Lloyd noticed a suspicious woman in sunglasses and a gothic outfit hiding behind a tree. He realized it was Stag Beetle Noir, the alchemist from the ranch. Noir was embarrassed to be caught staking out the guild. She revealed she was there to give Isolde a flyer for a fishing tournament at the Endless Eternal Water Sword. She admitted that last year's tournament had 0 participants, so she was desperately trying to recruit people this time. Lloyd promised to join and bring Iris along, which seemed to boost Noir's spirits. 3 days later, the group gathered for the trip to Tetra Island, home to Kaleido Beach. After Iris finished her church duties, she joined Lloyd, Tululu, Mars, and Lyra. The Demon Lord had even given Lloyd a day off from his guard duties, showing surprising kindness for a prisoner. The group boarded a carriage for the 2-hour land leg of the journey, excited for their overnight stay at a beachside inn. The group settled into the carriage and the vibe was great. Mars was hyped to swim again after years, while Rira was excited since she'd grown up in the forest and had never even seen the ocean. Lloyd was just happy to be there for fun instead of work for once. During the ride, Iris mentioned she'd brought everything from sunscreen to a lifebuoy since she wasn't a strong swimmer. When Rira teased Lloyd about wanting to see Iris in a swimsuit, the whole carriage burst into laughter. To pass the time, Mars pulled out Brave Cards, a popular game with 53 cards. They played a version called Hero Exile, where the goal is to get rid of pairs and not be the last one holding the single hero card. Iris was terrible at hiding her emotions. She'd beam whenever Lloyd drew the hero card from her hand. Eventually, Tululu won the game, admitting she used to play for putting prizes at her orphanage. After some singing and more games, they finally reached the port town. The salty air and the sound of seagulls amazed Iris, who had never seen such birds before. Lloyd left the group to wait in a long line for boat tickets while the others explored. Once they boarded the cruise ship, they enjoyed the view as the harbor faded into the distance. Lloyd was relaxing in the lobby with a book and some biscuits when a sudden, violent shake sent his coffee spilling all over his expensive grimoire. The panic started when Rira rushed in, screaming that a king kraken had appeared. This massive sea monster, nearly 100 meters long, was known as a mythical threat, though Lloyd knew it was just weak to lightning. Trying to be funny, Lloyd gave Rira a thumbs up and told her to handle it, but she just snapped at him for joking during an emergency. On deck, the situation was a mess. The kraken's tentacles had already captured several adventurers. Iris, wanting to prove herself, jumped into the fray to use a high-level water spell Lloyd had taught her. She struck a heroic pose but was immediately snatched up by a tentacle before she could finish her chant. Seeing his friends in trouble, Lloyd stepped in. He used wind magic to slice through the tentacles like a boomerang, freeing everyone. Then he leaped onto the monster's head and finished it off with a massive lightning blade, turning the creature to ash. Once they reached Tetra Island, they checked into a beautiful hotel with white wallpaper and a great view. After dropping their bags, Mars suggested visiting the local Black Lighthouse. Rira teased him, explaining the legend that couples who visit the lighthouse stay together forever. While Iris loved the romantic idea, they decided to go the next morning since the path was dangerous at night due to shadow cats, agile monsters that are a total pain to deal with. Finally, they headed to Kaleido Beach. After setting up a tent, everyone changed. Lloyd and Mars kept it simple with swim trunks, but the girls surprised them with their choices. Iris, Rira, and even the usually strict Tululu all showed up in bikinis, leaving the guys pretty impressed as they prepared to finally start their beach day. Lloyd watched the tourists to figure out the best way to enjoy the beach. He saw guys turtle skiing, riding high-speed turtles across the water, and groups playing beach volleyball with balls made of monster leather. Feeling like a bit of an introvert, Lloyd hesitated to join the cool kids, until he saw a fox girl beastman dive face first into the ocean and start gulping down the water because it looked delicious. Inspired by her pure energy, Lloyd tried the same thing, only to end up with a massive stomachache a few hours later. Despite the rough start, the group spent an hour splashing around and playing tag in the shallow water. When they took a break, Iris found herself in a weird battle with a small, aggressive crab that kept trying to snip her swimsuit. Lloyd quickly stepped in and flicked the crab away with his staff to save her outfit. Lloyd and Iris then decided to take a romantic walk along the shore. Iris spent the time collecting seashells and mermaid scales, which Lloyd stored in his item box magic to keep her hands free. They found a cave in a rocky area that was currently flooded by the tide, agreeing to come back later when the water went down. During the walk, Iris found a beautiful jade scale. Lloyd explained it belonged to a kaleido mermaid, a rare, gentle race of mermaids with human legs who wear very revealing, fancy clothes. Iris used the scale as a hair ornament, and when she asked Lloyd how she looked, he got so flustered by her cuteness that he could barely find the words to compliment her. Back at their tent, things got a bit annoying. Two guys were trying to hit on Rira and Talulu. Talulu tried to scare them off by pretending they had kids, but one of the guys admitted he actually preferred married women. Lloyd stepped in to claim the girls were with him, and the creeps finally backed off. While this was happening, Mars was completely oblivious, happily swimming far out in the ocean and leaving Rira feeling a bit ignored. Rira, acting as the group's self-proclaimed romance expert, tried to set up a sunscreen event. She wanted Lloyd to rub lotion on Iris to protect her skin, but Lloyd, ever the literal-minded mage, just suggested using a protect spell instead. Rira was annoyed by his lack of romantic awareness, but the beach day eventually wrapped up. The only downside was Lloyd's stomach finally giving up on him because of the seawater he drank earlier, forcing him to spend the rest of the afternoon in the bathroom. Once they returned to the inn, everyone headed to the hot springs. The baths were built by dwarves and carved out of premium marble. While the girls headed to their section, Rira teased Iris and Talulu about their bodies and their feelings for Lloyd. On the men's side, Lloyd entered a high-end sauna area managed by hot spring fairies who applied sweating oil. Inside the sauna, Lloyd immediately felt the competitive gaze of the other men. It turned into a silent sauna battle to see who could stay in the heat the longest. While the other guys were struggling and taking it seriously as a test of manhood, Lloyd secretly cheated by using a protective spell, allowing him to sit in the intense heat for hours without breaking a sweat. After leaving the sauna, Lloyd and Mars joked about Lloyd's habit of cheating to win, with Mars noting that Lloyd's true competitive nature comes out when he's focused. They moved on to the lukewarm baths, which were beautifully crafted by dwarves and featured stone sculptures of monsters like dragons and griffins. Lloyd explained that he preferred the traditional bathing method, moving from hot to lukewarm to cool, rather than jumping straight into a cold plunge. He credited his knowledge to a history book he borrowed from his friend Isolde, which also taught him about the sexy outfits of the kaleido mermaid. After a refreshing 2-hour soak, they met the girls in the hotel lobby. Even though the women used fewer beauty products while traveling, they had finished earlier than the men. The group headed to the top-floor restaurant for an all-you-can-eat seafood dinner. Iris was in heaven, happily devouring the food, while Lloyd enjoyed the stunning night view from the 6th floor, feeling like the trip was a total success. Later that night, a hotel employee informed Lloyd that someone wanted to see him. In the lobby, he met a stunning woman named Vermeer. She was a kaleido mermaid, featuring long blue hair, crimson eyes, and a unique outfit with semi-transparent sections and a fin-like tail. Vermeer was an envoy from the Kingdom of Atlanta, sent to thank Lloyd for defeating the King Kraken that had been terrorizing their waters. She revealed that they had been watching him on the beach, including the embarrassing moment he drank seawater, which left Lloyd feeling pretty awkward. Vermeer invited Lloyd to meet Lady Undine, the great spirit of water. Undine was a legendary figure known for her temper. She had destroyed entire countries with tsunamis when angered. Since Lloyd was still on vacation, he asked to delay the meeting. Vermeer agreed but warned that Undine hated waiting, so he had to show up within 3 days. Before heading to bed, Lloyd stopped by the girls' room and found them in the middle of a chaotic pillow fight. Even the serious Talulu was getting into it. Lloyd and Mars joined the fun, jumping on the beds and laughing like kids. Afterward, Lloyd explained the situation with Undine to the group. They agreed she was dangerous but capricious. To help Lloyd prepare for his meeting with the Emperor of the Sea, Iris and Talulu offered to take over his holy war duties with the demon Lord Albatross, whom they affectionately called Al, for the next day. Mars and Rira were shocked to learn Lloyd was casual friends with a demon lord. Rira even joked that Lloyd seemed to have a talent for making friends with powerful girls. The next morning, the group visited the local black lighthouse on a hill. Mars and Rira spent the time acting out a ridiculous improvised drama about a detective and a phantom thief, which Iris somehow found deeply moving. Standing by the lighthouse, Lloyd looked out at the sapphire blue ocean one last time, enjoying the calm before heading back to handle his meeting with the Great Spirit. Looking up at the lighthouse, Iris noticed something blue waving in the wind from the top railing. Curious, she convinced Lloyd to investigate. Since the rest of the group stayed behind, Lloyd and Iris entered the dark tower together. Lloyd used his shine magic to light the way up a stone spiral staircase, but they were suddenly interrupted by massive boulders rolling down toward them. Thinking it was a trap, Lloyd picked Iris up and used physical enhancement magic to leap over the rocks. They eventually reached the top, only to realize the trap wasn't intentional. A small spirit girl made of water was sitting there, sobbing uncontrollably. Her tears were literally turning into the giant rocks that had rolled down the stairs. The girl explained through her tears that she had recently been rejected by a human man. Iris gently comforted the spirit, holding her until she calmed down. Lloyd realized this girl was a powerful being capable of mental manifestation, turning raw emotions into physical objects. After about 30 minutes, the spirit girl finally stopped crying and thanked them for listening. Before leaving, Iris promised to visit the island again next year to check on her. The next morning, Lloyd said goodbye to his friends at the port. While they headed back, Lloyd stayed behind to meet Vermeer, the mermaid envoy. Since the Kingdom of Atlanta is underwater, Lloyd used water protect magic to breathe. Vermeer was shocked, noting that only master-level mages can usually pull that off. The two traveled to the underwater capital, Escalar, by riding a high-speed king turtle. During the 3-hour trip, Vermeer gave Lloyd a warning. Undine, the great spirit of water, had recently caused a 2-month storm near another kingdom because a man had broken her heart. Apparently, Lloyd's victory over the King Kraken was the only thing that finally put her in a good mood. Vermeer explained that Undine is essentially immortal. Even if she dies, she revives a century later, though she usually loses her memory, except for her habit of destroying kingdoms after a bad breakup. They soon arrived at Escalar, a stunning city made of glowing emerald stone that has existed for 10,000 years. Schools of fish swam through the streets, and the architecture was similar to the human world, suggesting ancient sea-to-land influence. Lloyd decided to stick to a warm and cozy strategy for the meeting, planning to use only positive words to avoid triggering Undine's temper. They skipped the sightseeing and headed straight for the opulent underwater palace to meet the legendary spirit. Lloyd entered the grand audience chamber and was stunned to find that Lady Undine, the great spirit of water, was actually the same crying spirit girl he and Iris had comforted at the lighthouse. Despite her status as a legendary being who could wipe out kingdoms, she was incredibly friendly and thanked Lloyd for his help. She even instructed her envoy, Vermeer, to treat Lloyd with the highest level of respect. Relieved that his warm and cozy strategy worked without him even trying, Lloyd spent an hour chatting with her about his life in Minerva. He stayed the night in the underwater capital as her guest, though the pressure of not upsetting such a powerful being made him feel like his life was being shortened by the stress. Vermeer later took him on a tour of the city, where he enjoyed mermaid concerts and a turtle game, an underwater version of horseback archery. The next morning, Lloyd prepared to leave. Undine saw him off with 50 slots worth of souvenirs, and Vermeer gifted him a magical blue harp. This special instrument carried sound clearly underwater and bore Vermeer's signature, which acted as a mark of friendship that would grant Lloyd help from any mermaid who saw it. Lloyd realized he now had 3 legendary items from different races: the fairy bow from the elves, the champion belt from the dwarves, and the mermaid's harp. Lloyd rushed back to Minerva on his horse, Artemis, realizing he had messed up his schedule and missed a holy war shift he was supposed to cover for the priestess Cephilia. When he found her and immediately apologized with a deep bow, Cephilia laughed it off. Talulu had noticed the mistake earlier, and the girls had already rearranged the shifts among themselves to cover for him. Grateful for his friend's support, Lloyd joined Cephilia for her scheduled shift with the Demon Lord. Back at the mansion, Lloyd reunited with the rest of the group. He shared the news that the spirit from the lighthouse was actually Undine, which shocked everyone. During the conversation, it turned out that Mars was heading to a wedding reception for the Albaba merchant group. This revealed a bit of Mars's mysterious past. His family were actually high-ranking merchants, though Rira suspected there was some dark underworld power involved in his background. Meanwhile, things were getting desperate for Alchemia, the arrogant alchemist who had previously worked with Lloyd. Now a wanted man and hated by the public, Alchemia had become delusional, blaming Lloyd for all his problems. He convinced himself that Iris was a villainous mastermind who had kidnapped Lloyd. Broke and hiding from the military police, Alchemia traveled to the town of Razel to find a junior alchemist he once knew. He planned to manipulate or extort this junior for money and weapons to rescue Lloyd and restore his own reputation. After finding the junior's modest atelier on a hill, Alchemia put on a fake smile and was invited inside, ready to start his desperate plan. Alchemia met with a junior alchemist named Sotira at her small clinic, hoping to use her workshop. He planned to create a Bahamut bomb, a high-powered explosive, to use as a threat to rescue Lloyd and intimidate Iris. Sotira agreed to let him use the room, leading to a comparison of their alchemical skills. In alchemy, recipes are created using inspiration magic, which varies based on the person's talent. Alchemia, still arrogant, boasted a Chronicle class recipe with a high score of 500 points, while Sotira's recipe only scored 60. However, Alchemia's recipe required rare, high-quality materials like king poppum and gold ore, which the clinic didn't have. Sotira pointed out they only had low-quality ingredients and suggested using a standard textbook recipe instead. Feeling insulted by the suggestion of using a beginner's book titled Alchemy for Goblins, Alchemia stubbornly tried to force his high-level recipe using the cheap material. He ignored the proper steps, leading to several failed attempts and small explosions. When he started kicking the equipment in a rage, Sotira finally snapped. She slapped him, yelled at him for disrespecting the materials her friends had worked hard to collect, and kicked him out of the shop. She threw a finished bomb and a silver coin at him as severance pay, telling him never to return. Humiliated and fueled by even more hatred for Lloyd and Iris, Alchemia wandered the streets until he was suddenly ambushed by royal knights. They pinned him down and found the Bahamut bomb, immediately labeling him a terrorist. Despite his screams that he was a great alchemist and that everything was Lloyd's fault, the knights threw him into a dark transport van to face the queen. Meanwhile, Lloyd returned to his holy war duties, which mostly involved keeping the demon lord, Albatross Al, entertained. Al is currently in his 6th reincarnation and is so dangerous that the kingdom keeps him at bay by treating him like a pampered pet. During their meeting, Lloyd brought steamed meat buns. The demon lord complained that he loved the buns but hated burning his mouth. Lloyd suggested using protect magic on Al's mouth so he could eat the buns while they were still piping hot without getting hurt. Al was impressed, calling Lloyd a genius for finding a magical solution to eating snack. After eating 30 buns, a satisfied Al shared a secret. 100 kilometers north of the Mermaid Kingdom lies the underwater ruins of Armada, where a 100-meter-long legendary sea dinosaur named Revites has been sealed for 200 years. The conversation with the demon lord, Albatross Al, shifted to the legendary sea dinosaur Revites. Al explained that the beast is a terrifying monster that reflects magic and blocks all physical attack. It was originally the Dotodon pet of the water spirit, Undine. Al recalled how he first met Undine long ago after saving a baby turtle from bullies, which led to a close friendship between them. While Undine was once gentle and noble, she became intensely possessive of Al. The situation turned dark when Revites suddenly went berserk and attacked the residents of the underwater capital. Al helped Undine seal the pet away, but the trauma triggered Undine's Yandir side. She became obsessively jealous, even attacking Al with a sacred sword when he tried to return to the surface. Al managed to escape but remains traumatized by her intensity. After their talk, Lloyd and Sephilia stayed the night in the sealed chamber. Sephilia, who had been recovering from a cold, shared a quiet moment with Lloyd, expressing her gratitude for his help. Lloyd noticed that she seemed much happier and more relaxed lately. The next morning, Sephilia suggested taking Al on an outing to Luminous Ranch to help him understand human morality. Lloyd was initially hesitant about letting a demon lord out, but Al pleaded for a chance to prove he had changed. After consulting with Iris, Talulu, and Isolde, they decided to test Al's conscience using a morality book. Al passed the test by giving short, suspiciously polite answers that seemed designed to please the graders. Despite some lingering doubts, they decided to proceed with the trip, trusting Sephilia to keep him in line. The moment Lloyd released the magical seal, Al's personality flipped. He laughed maniacally, mocking the group for being so easily fooled, and bolted toward the mine exit to reclaim his status as a terrifying demon lord. While Iris was heartbroken by the betrayal, Sephilia didn't miss a beat. She chased him down, and after 10 minutes of intensive retraining in a side alley, a bruised and terrified Al emerged, suddenly claiming to be a human-loving demon. The group moved to Minerva, where the townspeople mostly ignored Al's horns due to the rising number of tamed demons in the city. Iris tried to use the trip as an excuse to skip her church duties, but Talulu shut her down by threatening to serve her a dinner made entirely of bell pepper. Defeated, Iris headed to her meetings while Isolde joined Lloyd and Sephilia. The group planned to depart for the ranch that evening, with Isolde providing a carriage from her mansion for the journey. After making a promise to meet at 4 p.m., Lloyd, Sephilia, and the Demon Lord spent some time in the city. When the time came, they headed to Isolde's mansion to begin their trip. 2 carriages were waiting, along with a lady in an elegant white dress holding a parasol. Lloyd was stunned to realize it was Isolde. She looked like a high-class noblewoman, a far cry from her usual nightly appearance. Lloyd complimented her beauty, which made her blush, and jokingly threatened him with jail time for being rude. The group split up for the journey. Lloyd and Isolde took one carriage, while Sephilia and the Demon Lord took the other. The Demon Lord seemed to have taken a liking to Sephilia, likely because she was the kindest to him after his re-education. They traveled through the night and arrived at Luminous Ranch the next morning. The ranch had been fully restored after the meteorite incident, and tourists were already enjoying the scenery. While Sephilia took the Demon Lord to see the sights, Lloyd and Isolde sat on a bench to rest. Isolde thanked Lloyd for his help with the reconstruction, noting that his connection with the dwarves made it all possible. To have some fun, they decided to have a horse racing bet to see who would pick the lunch menu. Since both were experienced riders, Isolde as a knight and Lloyd as a former personal mage, they had a blast racing for over an hour. Afterward, they ran into Noir, the alchemist and head of the Luminous Guild. She wasn't wearing her usual goggles or riding a golem, looking quite normal for once. Noir teased Isolde about her relationship with Lloyd, making the night turn bright red. Noir revealed she was at the ranch to promote a fishing tournament. It turned out fishing was a secret hobby of Isolde's, though Noir joked that Isolde is way too picky and bossy when she fishes. When Isolde asked Noir why she wasn't participating herself, Noir claimed she was too busy with too many participants. But Lloyd noticed her breaking into a cold sweat, knowing full well that last year, the tournament had 0 people. Noir quickly made a theatrical excuse and ran off before her lies could be exposed. The Demon Lord approached Lloyd, curious about Noir. When Lloyd mentioned they were friends, Isolde got a bit jealous and suspicious, questioning how they got so close. Lloyd explained they just hit it off talking about fishing, which seemed to calm her down. The group then headed to the ranch restaurant for a hamburger steak lunch. During the meal, the conversation turned toward the meteorite that hit the ranch. Lloyd mentioned that it contains massive holy magic, even more than Iris, which is why she nicknamed it Super Iris. Isolde wondered if the rock fell from the heavens, a legendary realm above the clouds. While Cephilia believed in it due to her religion, the Demon Lord was skeptical, saying he had never seen an angel in all his thousands of years. Lloyd joked that Iris is supposed to be a reincarnated angel, but the Demon Lord dismissed that as a subjective opinion. They finished their trip and returned to Minerva, looking forward to the upcoming Harvest Festival. Meanwhile, in the underwater kingdom of Atlanta, Lady Undine finally remembered her pet, the monster Rivetes. It had been 150 years since the Demon Lord sealed it, and she hadn't visited the seal in 7 years. When she told her prime minister she wanted to visit the beast, he shocked her by revealing the seal had been cracking for 6 months and was about to break. Undine was furious that he hadn't told her, but the prime minister pulled out logs showing he had reported it multiple times. Undine realized she had been so obsessed with her romantic life that she had completely ignored his warning. She felt terrible and admitted her mistake. The problem was that the seal was a master-level barrier created by the Demon Lord. Undine and her mages had no idea how to fix such high-level magic. The prime minister suggested seeking out Lloyd, who had recently defeated the King Kraken and was rumored to use master-level magic like the item box. Undine agreed and set out for the sealed city of Armada immediately. Back in Minerva, Lloyd was at the Adventurers Guild looking at a new B-rank quest to hunt a kraken that was bothering tourists. Lyra approached him and suggested they team up. She wanted to show him a new combo move she practiced with Marth, where she infuses her lightning magic into a sword to give it elemental power. Lloyd agreed to the quest, looking forward to seeing Lyra and Marth's new combined lightning attacks. The next day, the trio arrived at Tetra Island. To lure the Kraken, they decided to call for help from Vermeer, the mermaid Lloyd had befriended previously. Lloyd pulled a harp from his item box, but Marth took over the instrument to play a beautiful melody that would show proper respect to the sea folk. Within minutes, a mermaid appeared, followed shortly by Vermeer. After friendly introductions, they set the plan. Vermeer and her subordinates would lure the Kraken toward a specific rocky area where Lloyd and his team would be waiting to ambush it. The plan worked perfectly. Lloyd stunned the monster with a lightning arrow, and Marth and Lyra finished it off with their flashy royal magical conflict lightning cross slash. As they were collecting magic stones from the defeated beast, a panicked mermaid rushed to Vermeer with an urgent message. The ancient seal on the legendary monster Rivetes was about to break in the underwater city of Armada. Marth explained that Rivetes is a massive, 100-meter-long sea dragon with purple scales that reflect all magic, making it a nightmare to fight. Vermeer begged Lloyd to help, as the resurrection of such a beast would destroy the kingdom of Atlanta. Lloyd was initially hesitant because the matchup against a magic-reflecting monster was terrible for a mage, but Lyra snapped him out of it. She scolded him for being too logical and boring lately, reminding him that the old Lloyd would have jumped in to help without overthinking. Inspired to act on his own sense of right and wrong again, Lloyd agreed to take down the dragon with his fists if magic wouldn't work. The group set off for Armada on the back of a king turtle. Meanwhile, Lady Undine arrived at the ruins of Armada to meet with the head of a research institute. They confirmed the seal was failing. Undine hoped to handle the situation peacefully since the beast was her former pet, but she authorized lethal force if necessary. She was informed that Lloyd was on his way to help, but before he could arrive, a massive earthquake shook the city. The golden pyramids that maintained the seal began to crack and crumble. Black smoke poured out as the Demon Lord's ancient barrier finally collapsed. Rivetes emerged, now a colossal 100-meter dinosaur-like dragon with wings and magic-reflecting scales. Undine tried to talk to her pet, but the creature had lost its mind and attacked instantly, nearly killing a soldier. Realizing the beast was far stronger than it was 200 years ago, Undine ordered her troops to attack. However, because she is a water spirit, her magic was useless against the dragon's scales. She tried to use water chains to bind it, the only magic the beast couldn't reflect, but Rivetes easily shattered them using its own defensive ability. As Undine realized she could no longer control her own creature, her vanguard soldiers rushed forward in a desperate attempt to protect her. The vanguard soldiers split up, charging Rivetes from both sides. However, the monster's water-protected scales were harder than solid rock, causing the soldiers' weapons to bounce off without leaving a scratch. Rivetes retaliated by swinging its massive tail and firing beams of light from its mouth, sending the soldiers flying. In a desperate move, the top-ranking swordsman launched a risky combination attack called Last Strike, which drained all their energy in one go. Even this failed to pierce the beast's defense. Morale collapsed and the remaining troops began to flee in terror. As Rivetes fired a super-compressed water beam to finish off the retreating crowd, Undine tried to block it with a barrier, but the attack tore right through. Just as the beam was about to wipe everyone out, Lloyd arrived and blocked the blast with a golden barrier. While Marth and Lyra watched from the safety of a king turtle, Lloyd reassured Undine and prepared to fight. Undine warned him that magic was useless, but Lloyd ignored the warning and launched a water Daedalus spell. The two massive attacks collided, canceling each other out. Without pausing, Lloyd used a no-chanting technique to fire a second water dragon, timing it perfectly to hit Rivetes inside its open mouth. The monster screamed and collapsed. While the beast was down, Lloyd cast a high-level mega healing spell that covered the entire battlefield, instantly closing the wounds of every fallen soldier and even healing Undine. He explained that while the monster's scales reflect magic, its internal organs are vulnerable, which is why attacking the mouth worked. However, Rivetes stood back up, roaring in pain. When Lloyd asked Undine if she wanted the creature dead, she hesitated, clearly wanting to save her former pet. Lloyd realized he had to weaken the beast further without killing it. He tried another attack, but the monster had adapted and began dodging his spells. Just as the fight was getting difficult, the demon Lord Albatross appeared, floating in the air. He claimed he had come to help his best friend Undine, leading to a quick reconciliation between the two. Albatross revealed his secret weapon, the Super Iris meteorite he had taken from the ranch. Because the rock was packed with holy magic, it possessed a divine attribute that could bypass normal defenses. Using his powers, the Demon Lord launched the meteorite like a bullet, slamming it into Rivetes' torso. The impact was so strong it stripped away the monster's water protection entirely. Albatross began laughing like a villain, repeatedly bashing the defenseless dragon with the giant rock. Suddenly, the situation turned dark. Rivetes' body turned pitch black and erupted in hellish flames. In this new form, the monster fired a beam so powerful it overpowered the meteorite. The rock was blasted back, hitting Albatross and sending him crashing into a ruined building. With the demon lord out of the fight, the black-flamed dragon turned its sights back on the group. Lloyd stepped in to block the next beam, but the pressure was so intense his barrier started to crack. He tried another water attack, but the black flames simply evaporated. Seeing the hope in the eyes of his friends and the mermaids, Lloyd refused to give up. He realized the meteorite was still on the battlefield and decided to use it himself. Lloyd positioned himself so the meteorite was between him and the dragon. He poured every ounce of his mana into a final spell, launching a water Daedalus that swallowed the meteorite whole. The holy magic of the rock combined with Lloyd's water dragon, transforming it into a massive, golden shining dragon that dwarfed Rivetes. The golden dragon dove from the sky, crushing the monster under a wave of divine energy. When the light faded, Rivetes lay exhausted on the ground, the evil black flames finally gone. Lloyd realized he was completely out of mana after the fight, so he decided to wait an hour for his energy to recover before attempting to seal Rivetes. He met up with Lady Undine, who agreed to wait, and they were soon joined by Vermeer, Marth, and Lyra. Marth and Lyra were incredibly nervous to meet the legendary Undine, but they introduced themselves politely. While waiting, Lloyd asked Undine what could have caused the dragon's sudden violence. She mentioned the Shadow Spirit Abyss, an ancient cemetery nearby known for dark spirits that can possess living beings. Lloyd suspected a possession was the cause, especially since the monster reacted so strongly to the holy magic of the meteorite. Suddenly, the ground shook as Rivetes stood up. Lloyd reached for his staff, but Marth and Lyra jumped in front of him, ready to sacrifice themselves to buy him time to escape. Before a fight could break out, the massive dragon looked down at them and spoke in a friendly, childlike voice, asking Undine to play. Everyone was stunned. It turned out the impact of the meteorite had knocked the dark spirit out of him, returning the beast to his normal, peaceful self. With the crisis over, The group and the soldiers returned to the Kingdom of Atlanta, though Lloyd realized he had accidentally left the demon Lord Albatross behind in the ruin. Meanwhile, a demon named Kirikarasu, who still held a grudge against Lloyd, was planning her next move. She received word that the Purgatory Slaughter Squad was sending reinforcements, including her mentor, the Alron Queen. Kirikarasu decided to visit the fallen alchemist Ruby, who was being held in the Tower of Melzelia awaiting trial. Using her Eye of Domination magic to brainwash the guards, Kirikarasu slipped into the dungeon. She found Ruby in a state of total breakdown, screaming and tearing her hair out. Ruby was desperate because no one would agree to be her lawyer. Kirikarasu looked through Ruby's mail and saw rejection letters from everyone she knew. Even Lloyd's friends had written to tell her to stay away from him. Seeing how pathetic and abandoned Ruby had become, Kirikarasu lost all interest in her and left the cell, leaving the former alchemist to rot. A week later, Lloyd was back in Minerva. He received a warm thank you letter from Lady Undine, promising her full support whenever he needed it. The town was buzzing with excitement for the upcoming Autumn Harvest Festival, decorated with lights and stalls. Lloyd decided to take a 4-day break from adventuring to enjoy the festivities with Cecilia, Marth, and Lyra. As he was walking through the crowded streets, a thief in a mask suddenly sprinted past, clutching a stolen handbag and waving a knife at people to get out of the way. The criminal headed straight toward Lloyd, laughing and threatening to stab anyone in his path. Lloyd didn't move an inch, simply sighing at the man's stupidity. Lloyd didn't hesitate for a second. He quickly cast an ice prison spell, freezing the thief from the feet up before knocking him unconscious with a hypnotic spell. As he returned the stolen bag to its owner, the crowd erupted in cheers, praising him as Minerva's strongest mage. The victim, a grateful coffee shop owner, even invited him to her cafe for a free drink. Lloyd felt a wave of confidence. He used to fear being recognized, but now he truly enjoyed helping people. Continuing his walk, Lloyd spotted Iris and Talulu near the church square. Iris was busy practicing her lines for the Harvest Festival, where she would be performing as a saint. Since they all had some free time before their next meeting, Iris invited them to lunch at Nero's shop. When they arrived, they were shocked to see a long line outside. Nero's shop had always been empty, but now it was packed. Once inside, they realized why. Nero had completely rebranded the place into a maid cafe. Maids in cat ears were running around calling customers master and meow meow. Lloyd, Iris, and Talulu were led to a table, feeling a bit awkward as a maid treated them like returning lords. The menu was just as strange, featuring Moe Moe Amuris and a Tsundir version for an extra coin. Lloyd explained that a Tsundir was someone who acted tough and annoyed but was actually nice, kind of like their friend Noir. Intrigued, Iris ordered the Tsundir version. When the food arrived, Lloyd and Talulu were forced to perform a deliciousness spell by making heart shapes with their hands and chanting Moe Moe Kayan. Talulu looked completely soulless while doing it. Meanwhile, Iris's order was slammed onto the table by an incredibly grumpy maid who doused the rice in a mountain of ketchup before storming off. Nero eventually came out of the kitchen, looking happier and more energetic than ever. He explained that the maid cafe was a survival strategy to differentiate his business, and since it was a hit, he was sticking with it. Seeing how hard he was working, Iris sincerely congratulated. Nero was so touched he offered them free dessert. Even the Tsundir maid broke character, accidentally showing her sweet side while serving Lloyd's pudding, which made everyone smile. After lunch, Iris reminded Lloyd to watch her performance the next day before she and Talulu headed back to work. Lloyd returned to his inn to plan his festival schedule. Day 1 with Marth and Lyra, Day 2 at the fishing tournament, and Day 3 left open. On his way, he ran into Isolde. She looked unusually serious and handed him a letter. For a moment, Lloyd got flustered, thinking it was a date invitation, but Isolde corrected him. It was about his former boss, Ruby. Embarrassed, Lloyd listened as Isolde mentioned she'd actually be free for a date on the 3rd day of the festival before turning back to the serious matter at hand. The letter from Ruby was a disaster. She was facing trial for treason and insulting the crown. In her frantic writing, she blamed everyone but herself, claiming her new mage was incompetent, the queen was being unreasonable, and her plan to use a Bahamut bomb to kill Iris only failed because she was betrayed. She begged Lloyd to come back and represent her in court. Lloyd read the delusional rants and let out a dry laugh. Ruby hadn't changed at all. She was still refusing to take any responsibility for her own crime. Without saying a word, Lloyd used a basic fire spell to burn the letter to ashes. He told Isolde that his relationship with Ruby was long over and he had no intention of helping. He was done with his past and ready to enjoy the festival. After burning Ruby's letter, Lloyd officially scheduled his date with Isolde for the final day of the Harvest Festival. He felt a deep sense of relief knowing he was finally valued in Minerva, a sharp contrast to his past. The next morning, Lloyd met Marth and Lyra at the town square. The city was covered in colorful triangular flags, which Marth explained were called continuous triangular flags, a detail he learned from his merchant father. Lyra mentioned that in her elf village, children carved wood for festivals, boasting that her dexterity as an elf made her an expert at the craft. The trio enjoyed breakfast at the market before heading to the church for the main event. At noon, the church doors opened to reveal Iris in her official role as the saint. Dressed in white priestly robes and carrying a glowing staff, she looked divine and artistically beautiful, leaving the massive crowd breathless. As she walked the red carpet, her usual playful personality vanished, replaced by an icy, solemn expression befitting a pillar of the nation. Surrounded by knights like Cephilia and Isolde, she stood on a high platform and delivered a powerful speech. She prayed for the kingdom of Malzelia and swore to destroy the Area Zero curse and all evil. Even the demon lord who was in the crowd cheered for her to destroy the villains, seemingly forgetting he was technically one of them. Before Iris finished her 30-minute speech and retreated into the church, she caught Lloyd's eye and gave him a quick, fleeting smile that only he noticed. An hour later, Iris rejoined the group, back to her cheerful and warm self. She admitted that memorizing her long speech was exhausting, but was thrilled to finally enjoy the festival. Lulu and Cephilia joked about Lloyd being a reliable bodyguard for Iris, which made everyone laugh while Lloyd wondered why they all trusted him so much. Meanwhile, the story shifts to the trial of Ruby. In the kingdom of Malzelia, there are two types of trials: ordinary ones and Queen's trial. Since Ruby is accused of treason and disrespecting royalty, she faces the latter, where the young queen herself acts as the judge. In these trials, the queen values elegance above all else. Behaving like a refined aristocrat can actually lessen a criminal's sentence, while failing to be elegant can lead to the Abyss Wall, a terrifying prison that is basically a death sentence. A soldier came to collect Ruby, mocking her and telling her she was definitely guilty. Ruby, delusional as ever, snapped back that she was a victim of a misunderstanding. As she was driven to the courthouse, she blamed her ruined reputation on Iris, whom she viewed as a master manipulator who had stolen Lloyd away. In the courtroom, Ruby stood before the queen, a blonde, 14-year-old girl with a sharp tongue. The queen immediately called Ruby out for being a fugitive who ran away from her royal duties. Ruby tried to claim she only fled her workshop because of a robber, but the queen pointed out that Ruby somehow found the time to pack a backpack full of gold coins while under attack. Ruby froze, realizing her lies were failing and that the Abyss Wall was becoming a very real possibility. The narrative then flashes back to Ruby's 13th birthday, the day she became eligible to join the Alchemy Guild. Growing up in the Yell orphanage after losing her parents to monsters, she lived with Lloyd and was raised by the orphanage director, a silver-haired woman who taught her magic. On that morning, Ruby went searching for Lloyd and found him talking to the director in the chapel, eager to start her journey as an alchemist. The headmistress of the Yell orphanage was a mysterious woman who never seemed to age, leading to rumors that she might be a demon. Despite her quirks, she treated the children like her own. Lloyd, who was always looking for a shortcut, once begged her for an ultimate magic spell that could win any fight instantly. The headmistress didn't indulge his nonsense, instead ordering him to cast 5,000 water balls as a daily exercise of gratitude. While other students slacked off and only did a fraction of their assigned daily tasks, Lloyd was the only one honest enough to cast exactly 5,000 spells every single day. He eventually realized that the headmistress's teaching style was strictly hands-off. She taught only one basic spell and expected students to learn everything else themselves through research. When Lloyd complained that he was being called the water ball kid by the neighbors, the headmistress simply doubled his daily requirement to 10,000 casts. Frustrated, Lloyd ran into Ruby outside the chapel. It was her 13th birthday, the day she was finally eligible to register as an alchemist. Excited to start her career, she asked Lloyd to be her personal mage. Although Lloyd grumbled that gathering materials sounded like a massive pain, he couldn't leave her hanging. He agreed to go to the Alchemy Guild with her, though he insisted it was only a temporary arrangement until she found someone proper. At the guild, they learned the strict rules of the profession. Alchemists were forbidden from gathering materials alone because of the high mortality rate. Every alchemist required a dedicated mage to handle the dangerous fieldwork. Seeing that Ruby couldn't even start her first job without a partner, Lloyd dropped his stubborn act, picked up a pen, and officially signed on as her dedicated maid. Ruby was deeply moved, realizing that despite his complaints, Lloyd was the most dependable person she knew. Their first quest was a simple E-rank task, creating 5 red potions for a reward of 3 silver coins. They headed into the nearby forest to hunt red slimes and gather herbs. Lloyd easily handled the monsters with his practiced water ball magic, while Ruby focused on the collection. In those early days, they worked in perfect harmony, with Lloyd scratching his head in embarrassment whenever Ruby thanked him for his protection. Years later, the memory of that day haunted Ruby as she sat in the back of a dark transport van. Shackle-bound and headed for the Abyss Wall prison, she finally faced the ugly truth of her downfall. After Lloyd left her, her inspiration magic had completely broken. Because her heart had grown arrogant and cruel, Her mind could only come up with recipes requiring impossible materials from Area Zero, making it impossible for her to produce even a basic potion. She realized that the inspiration an alchemist receives is a reflection of their character. By treating Lloyd like trash and insulting the man who risked his life to gather her materials, she had poisoned her own talent. She finally understood that Lloyd hadn't been useless. He was likely the most skilled mage in the kingdom for successfully surviving Area Zero alone just to help her. Overwhelmed by regret and the realization that she had destroyed the one person who truly cared for her, Ruby wept in her cell, knowing it was far too late to ever say she was sorry. Before boarding the ship to the Abyss Wall, Ruby begged the knights to deliver an apology to Lloyd. They laughed in her face, calling her a power-abusing fraud and blaming her for the kingdom losing its greatest maid. They roughly shoved her onto the ship, ignoring her pleas. 2 weeks later, Ruby is a prisoner on the Abyss Wall, a small island surrounded by man-eating red wolves and impossible currents. Life there is a living death. Prisoners are kept in solitary confinement with no labor and only one bland meal a day. Guards ignore her or beat her with batons for speaking. Her right arm is still swollen from a recent strike. Trapped in despair, Ruby finally gives up on life, wishing for death as she cries in her cell. Suddenly, a man named Kurikarasu, a world-famous hitman she had encountered before, drops from the ceiling. Ruby asks him to kill her, but he slaps her across the face. Using a voice that reveals he is actually a woman, the hitman calls Ruby worthless and refuses to waste a blade on her. Kurikarasu reveals she was only waiting there to see if Lloyd would come to rescue Ruby, but he never showed. Lloyd has completely cut ties. As Ruby sobs, Kurikarasu challenges her to stop relying on Lloyd. She tells Ruby that if she actually feels sorry for him, she should move on and become a great alchemist on her own 2 feet. Ruby realizes she has always been emotionally dependent on Lloyd's talent. She remembers that legendary alchemists like Hecate didn't rely on one specific mage. They used their own skills to make any material work. Ruby decides she wants to live and try alchemy one more time. Seeing her resolve, Kurikarasu shatters Ruby's chains with a sword, helping her escape. News of the escape reaches Queen Melzalia. While her advisors panic about the threat to Princess Iris, the queen remains calm, dismissing Ruby as a failure who can't even do basic alchemy. Secretly, the queen feels responsible for Ruby's arrogance, as she had also underestimated Lloyd's worth in the past. She views allowing Ruby's escape as a way to atone, trusting that Lloyd can handle whatever trouble follows. Meanwhile, a month has passed since the summer festival. Lloyd is thriving on the Minerva and is now taking his B-rank promotion exam. His task is to clear out Cyclops from the Earth Temple, a dangerous site built into an abandoned mine. His examiner is Isolde, who reminds him that while the Temple of Wind was easy, the Earth Temple is full of mid-level threats like golems and Little Devil. As they explore the glowing cavern, a Little Devil attacks. Lloyd takes it down with a single spark spell. He tells Isolde he is finally learning to believe in his own magic after the dragon incident. Isolde encourages him, noting that he shines much brighter now that he has someone to protect. Deep in the temple, they find the target Cyclops, a 3-meter-tall monster with a single horn. Lloyd prepares to attack, but instead of using his usual long chance, he decides to attempt instant casting. He knows his success rate is low, but he is determined to master it so he can become strong enough to protect Iris. Channeling his energy, Lloyd shouts the name of his spell, Water Daedalus. Lloyd's Water Daedalus spell is a massive success. A giant water dragon surges forward, instantly wiping out a row of Cyclops without Lloyd even needing to chant. This breakthrough confirms he's growing stronger because he finally has people he wants to protect. With this victory, Lloyd officially passes his exam and is promoted to B rank, which opens up almost every high-level quest available. Back at the guild, Lloyd meets up with his friends and mentors, Rara and Mars. They are impressed by how fast he's climbing the ranks. To celebrate, Lloyd offers to treat them to lunch, a gesture of thanks for all the advice and support they've given him. They head to Nero's restaurant, a place known for good food and quirky maid service. Nero, the owner and a former elite chef, tells them he's working on a new autumn menu and needs testers. Instead of typical seasonal food, Nero presents them with level 5000 extremely spicy curry. He even makes customers sign a waiver saying the restaurant isn't responsible for what happens to them. Rara, confident in her skills as an elite elf, tries a spoonful and is immediately taken down by the heat, collapsing in pain. Lloyd tries to use protection magic to eat it, but the spice is so intense it burns right through his magical defenses. Suddenly, Vermeer, a powerful warrior and former member of the Knights, arrives. Unlike the others, she eats the entire plate of deadly curry with a straight face, explaining that her race can negate fire-based damage. She reveals some shocking news. She has resigned from the Knight's Order and is now looking for a new job with a better work-life balance. She came to Minerva specifically to find the sword saint, Cephilia, hoping for a legendary duel. The next morning, Lloyd finds a new quest on the bulletin board. Noir, the guild leader of Luminous, is hiring security for a fishing tournament on Tetra Island. The area is currently infested with metal slashers, giant crabs, and flying jellies, electric jellyfish, due to the autumn breeding season. Lloyd, Rira, and Mars all decide to sign up for the job. On the day of the quest, they arrive at the island and meet up with about 15 other adventurers, ready to clear out the monsters and keep the tournament participants safe. As Lloyd stands on the harbor, he is greeted by several young adventurers from the Luminous Guild. They are friends of Mars and Rira, mostly C-rankers who have struggled with the B-rank exam because they find monsters like Cyclops too difficult. When Mars introduces Lloyd, the group loses their mind. Rumors of the legendary Archmage have spread everywhere, and they are shocked to see he is around their own age. Before Lloyd can even process his new celebrity status, a crowd of locals and adventurers swarms him for autograph. Noir, the client and guild leader, arrives on a passenger ship and makes a grand entrance, though she accidentally flashes the crowd from the deck. When she jumps down, she lands awkwardly and hurts her knee. Lloyd quickly heals her with magic, earning her gratitude and a pass for the underwear incident. As they prepare to sail to Tetra Island, Rira asks about Noir's personal mage, Crowley. Noir explains that Crowley is currently away on a mission for the king. Mars and Rira mention that Crowley is a talented elf who can use magic without chanting, a skill Lloyd has only recently mastered himself. Lloyd feels a competitive spark, wanting to improve even more before he eventually meets this famous mage. The group is joined by two other adventurers, Tom and a girl named Becky. Becky starts complaining that hunting monsters is cruel, but Tom quickly shuts her down, pointing out that she only took the high-paying quest for the money and didn't even read the details. 20 minutes into the voyage, the ship is blocked by the Nanami squad, three mermaids who claim the waters as their territory. Noir, showing her ruthless side, suggests just ramming the ship through them at full speed, but Lloyd convinces her to let him handle it peacefully. Using air ride magic to walk on the sky and surface of the water, Lloyd confronts the mermaids. They refuse to move and attack him all at once. Lloyd uses his enhanced reflexes to dodge every single strike for 30 minutes without breaking a sweat. When the mermaids finally collapse from exhaustion, Lloyd uses a healing spell on himself to instantly erase his fatigue, completely breaking their spirits. Once they realize he is the famous Lloyd who defeated the Leviathan, they turn into total fangirls and ask for his autograph. They warn him to watch out for a sea monster named Askar that haunts the area. Feeling guilty for being mean to such a polite hero, the mermaids clear the path. With the way open, the ship continues toward Tetra Island for the tournament. Meanwhile, far away on the ocean, Ruby has successfully escaped her prison. She is rowing a small boat toward the mainland with the hitman Kirakarasu, heading for the Southlight region to avoid the king's scouts and start her life over. Ruby struggles to move the oars of the small boat, her hands heavy and tired. Kirakarasu, the hitman, scolds her for being useless and tells her to stop complaining if she wants to change her life. As they row under the scorching sun, Ruby asks why she became an assassin. Kirakarasu explains that she comes from a long line of killers, but after her home was destroyed in a war, she was scouted by the leader of the Purgatory Slaughter Group. Even though it's a criminal organization, she deeply respects her leader for acknowledging her strength. She tells Ruby that while she is stuck in the underworld, Ruby still has a chance to start over and find happiness without relying on alchemy. As evening falls, Ruby notices a reddish star in the sky called Rubistera, which sounds like her name. Kirakarasu shares her bread with Ruby, even though she claims she can go a week without food. They share a rare peaceful moment, and Ruby is surprised to find out that the world-class hitman can't swim at all. Kirakarasu gets embarrassed and nearly flips the boat when Ruby laughs at her clumsiness. The piece is shattered at midnight when a massive rift opens in the sky, followed by a blinding red flash. A giant shockwave hits the boat, throwing Ruby into the ocean. Her clothes pull her down like lead, and as a massive wave crashes over her, she loses consciousness and sinks into the dark water. Meanwhile, Lloyd and his team arrive at Tetra Island to begin clearing out monsters before the fishing tournament. Noir puts Lloyd in charge of the security operation because of his B-rank status and deep knowledge of magic. Lloyd feels a bit nervous, but excited to lead a group for the first time. Mars and Rira tease him about not becoming a power harasser like Ruby was, and Lloyd promises to be a better leader. The other adventurers, especially those from the Luminous Guild, are obsessed with Lloyd. They even start fighting over who gets to stand in the front row near him. Once everyone settles down, Lloyd explains the dangers of the flying jelly and the armor slasher crab. When he suggests using advanced magic like Thunderbolt to deal with multiple crabs, the group reveals that none of them can use advanced spell. Realizing the gap in their power, Lloyd teaches them how to use the basic flash spell as a tactical tool to blind and stun enemy. The adventurers are amazed because they previously thought the spell was useless. Lloyd warns them to work as a team and stay safe, earning even more respect from the crowd. Lloyd, Mars, and Rira head to the northern coast to start their patrol. They chat about the upcoming tournament and how Noir is more passionate about fishing than alchemy. Rira tries to convince Lloyd to move to her elf village, but Lloyd says he wants to stay with Minerva for now, though he is interested in traveling the world more. Suddenly, a flying jelly appears. Lloyd effortlessly takes it out with a single ice cannon shot to the head, showing off his perfect aim. As they continue their walk, Lloyd reflects on how much his world has expanded since he stopped being a personal mage. Mars and Rira are so fired up by Lloyd's growth that they beg to join his future travel. Lloyd warns them that he plans to charge straight through Area Zero, the world's deadliest zones, but the challenge only makes them more excited. Mars vows to train 24 hours a day to reach master rank, while Rira decides to finally get serious about her magic so she can keep up. The team arrives at the beach to find a massive black crab scurrying across the sand. Lloyd identifies it as a full metal king armor slasher, an extremely rare and dangerous variant. Its shell has a special ability that reduces almost any physical or magical attack to practically zero damage. Eager to show off their progress, Rira and Mars tell Lloyd to step back. They unleash a powerful combination move called Royal Magical Conflict Lightning Cross Slash, blending Rira's wind magic with Mars's swordsmanship. Despite a direct hit and a massive explosion, the crab doesn't have a single scratch. When their friendship magic fails, Mars tries to brute force it with a flurry of strikes, but he still can't break the shell. Realizing they are just wasting time, Lloyd steps in. He explains that Rira's intermediate rank simply lacks the firepower to pierce such high defense. With a single cast of Lightning Storm, Lloyd completely fries the monster, leaving it a burnt crisp. Rira is visibly discouraged, feeling like she can never catch up to Lloyd's level. Lloyd notices she has been trying to steal his techniques by watching him rather than asking for help. He tells her that she is an important friend and he wants to help her reach the master level. Moved to tears by his kindness, Rira's competitive spirit returns, and she jokingly promises to surpass him soon. Mars, inspired by the moment, decides he needs to officially ask the Sword Saint, Cephilia, to take him on as a student. With the coast cleared, the team heads to their hotel to relax. Later that night, Lloyd goes to an observation deck and notices an eerie red light glowing on the horizon. The light stains the sky and sea, causing the tides to recede strangely, like a precursor to a tsunami. He finds Noir at the water's edge, also puzzled by the phenomenon. Since the red light is over the ocean, it can't be a curse from Area Zero, making it a complete mystery to both of them. The peaceful moment is shattered when a colossal water dragon named Askar emerges from the sea. This version is dozens of times larger than the one Lloyd fought years ago, standing as tall as a mountain. As the beast roars, it creates massive waves that threaten to wipe out the shore. To stop the incoming tsunami, Lloyd summons Ice Valkyrie, a top-tier manifestation spell. A 10-meter-tall ice warrior appears wielding a massive spear. With one thrust, the Valkyrie vaporizes the waves, then glides across the water, freezing the sea in its wake. She strikes Askar with a freezing blow, turning the mountain-sized dragon into a solid block of ice instantly. Noir is left speechless by the display of power, jokingly asking if she should start using formal language with Lloyd because he's so strong. As they head back, the red light on the horizon fades away. They are met by a crowd of adventurers who saw the light and the frozen dragon. They cheer for Lloyd, calling him a lifesaver. The three mermaids Lloyd met earlier also arrive, stunned to see Askar defeated. Lloyd takes the opportunity to tell them that their sister, Vermeer, is currently at Minerva. The mermaids are shocked but relieved to know where she is. When Lloyd promises to look after her, the mermaids jump to a wild conclusion, convinced that Vermeer quit her job at the palace specifically to be with Lloyd. Rira screams in shock, comparing the situation to a famous romantic legend where a mermaid gives up everything for a prince. The chaotic scene with the mermaids finally settles down, though it takes an hour for Lloyd to escape the crowd and return to his hotel. The next morning, the fishing tournament begins, and the beach is packed with over 100 people. Lloyd is shocked by the turnout, only to realize the crowd is actually there to see him. As fans cheer and scream his name, Lloyd can't help but enjoy the attention. He even summons his Ice Valkyrie to give them a show, causing some fans to faint from excitement. While Mars and Rira tease him for being a bit too cocky, Lloyd feels good about finally being respected. Noir pulls Lloyd away from the crowd to meet a VIP guest. To Lloyd's surprise, the VIP is Iris. Because they are so close, Lloyd often forgets she is a high-ranking saint and the second most important person in the kingdom. Iris has brought along her head maid to Lulu and 10 other attendants for a private fishing trip on a massive boat. During the trip, Lloyd learns that Iris's legendary bodyguard, Cephilia, is currently away at the Temple of Fire. She is hunting monsters to gather materials for a Crimson Light talisman as a birthday gift for Tululu. As the day goes on, Iris becomes quiet and reveals she had a terrifying nightmare where Minerva was destroyed by a swarm of monsters. Lloyd tries to comfort her, but he can't help but connect her dream to the strange red light he saw the night before. He tells her the truth about the light, and Iris identifies it as the evil red moon, a legendary omen of a kingdom's downfall. She explains that 150 years ago, a similar light appeared before a neighboring country was wiped out by a fairy dragon. The mood turns heavy until Noir interrupts, telling them to stop ruining the fun with talk of doomsday. Noir gives Iris some tough love, explaining that she shouldn't carry the burden alone or dump it all on Lloyd. She suggests that if Iris is truly worried, she should submit an official request to the guild so everyone can help. Iris realizes Noir is right and feels relieved knowing she has a whole community behind her. She and Lloyd share a quiet moment, promising to protect Minerva together if the omen ever comes true. Meanwhile, the story shifts to the hitman Kirikarasu. She recalls her past and her mentor, White Rose, a beautiful but deadly assassin who used poison and had a brutal do-or-die training style. This training is the only reason Kirikarasu is currently alive. When the red light hit the ocean the previous night, the massive waves destroyed their small boat and sent both her and Ruby flying. Despite being unable to swim, Kirikarasu used a high-speed footwork technique called gale force to sprint across the surface of the crashing waves until the sea calmed down. Kirikarasu eventually found a piece of wreckage to float on, but she assumed Ruby was dead. She felt a small sting of sadness and decided that if she ever found Ruby's body, she would build her a grave. The next morning, Kirikarasu washes up on a small, jungle-covered island. To her surprise, she finds Ruby's body lying on the sand nearby. Sticking to her word, Kirikarasu spends 30 minutes digging a hole in the sand with her bare hand. She treats the task like a chore, eventually kicking Ruby's corpse into the pit and starting to shovel sand over her. Just as Ruby is 2/3 buried, she suddenly bolts upright like a zombie, screaming an apology for her past behavior. Kirikarasu jumps back in total shock, as the girl she was trying to bury alive turns out to be very much awake. Kirikarasu knocks Ruby out with a quick chop to the neck to stop her from panicking. As Ruby sleeps, Kirikarasu realizes they are stuck on an uninhabited island and need a plan to escape. While she still wants to defeat Lloyd eventually, her main goal now is survival. She decides that since Ruby is here, she might as well make her useful instead of doing everything alone. Kirikarasu heads into the jungle and finds an apple tree. Using her speed magic, she gathers 20 apples and returns to find Ruby awake. Ruby is surprisingly grateful, calling Kirikarasu her lifesaver. Kirikarasu doesn't bother correcting her about the fact that she actually tried to bury her earlier. It's better if Ruby just forgets that part. When Kirikarasu uses a knife to neatly slice an apple, Ruby is shocked, calling it an amazing feat. Kirikarasu is confused until Ruby admits she can't even handle a kitchen knife. At 19 years old, Ruby has never cooked a single meal because she always made Lloyd or the other orphans do it for her. She claims her orphanage director valued independence, but Kirikarasu realizes the director was just lazy and failed to teach the kids basic life skills. This explains why Lloyd was never appreciated and why Ruby grew up so spoiled and useless. Feeling a rare sense of pity, Kirikarasu decides to change Ruby. She gives her 3 tasks. First, Ruby must help gather wood to build a boat. Second, she has to learn to cook. Ruby is nervous, but when Kirikarasu offers to teach her, Ruby feels a spark of hope because for the first time, someone actually needs her for something other than alchemy. As for the third task, Kirikarasu keeps it a secret, telling Ruby to meet her in the northern clearing early the next morning to find out. The next morning, the protagonist, Kirikarasu, met Ruby at the cleared square. He told her she was too weak and needed to learn martial arts to survive the harsh life ahead. Ruby was surprisingly motivated until he strapped a heavy wooden statue to her back with vines. He ordered her to run around the entire island every day. When she complained that it was impossible, he drew his dagger, pointed it at her throat, and told her to choose between running or dying right there. Terrified, she started sprinting. Kirigarasu didn't just watch, he chased her and whipped her whenever she slowed down, even though his training methods were brutal and inhumane. He noticed Ruby had a strong will to live and actual talent for martial arts. Despite her crying and screaming in pain, he had no intention of stopping the hell he had created for her. Meanwhile, back in the city of Minerva, Lloyd and Iris were planning to bake biscuits for Talulu's upcoming birthday. They went to visit Nero at his maid cafe to ask for baking lessons. While they were talking, Mars and Rira rushed in, panicking. They revealed that Sephilia, the incredibly strong sword saint, had been kidnapped. A mysterious woman had challenged her to a fight, defeated her easily, and taken her away. Rira dropped a bombshell. The kidnapper was targeting Lloyd specifically and had shouted that she was going to kill him. Lloyd was confused but realized the description of the kidnapper, a woman in white wearing a red demon mask, matched the Alron Queen. He had fought this mythical monster 3 years ago during his time as a personal mage. She was a cruel, high-level monster who was nearly as strong as a legendary dragon. Iris immediately insisted on going to rescue Sephilia, but Nero tried to block her. He argued that Iris was too weak and would only be a hindrance to Lloyd, potentially getting herself killed. Iris was crushed by the truth of his words until Lloyd stepped in. He told Iris that it was her life and her choice to make, regardless of what others thought. Encouraged, Iris stood her ground and told Nero she was going, even if it meant being a burden. Nero stormed off in a rage, worried for her safety. Mars and Rira also insisted on joining the rescue mission. Lloyd sighed, realizing his job just got much harder. He now had to face a mythical monster while protecting 3 people who weren't strong enough to fight it. While Rira claimed she could handle herself with her archery skills, Lloyd knew he would have to carry the heavy lifting. Before leaving, the group decided they needed to inform Talulu about the situation. Iris took the lead, insisting that since the decision to rescue Cephilia was hers, she should be the one to convince Talulu. She didn't want to burden the others with her personal choice, but Mars and Rira wouldn't hear of it. They jumped in to support her, promising that all 4 of them would face Talulu together as a team. This gesture moved Iris to tears, seeing how much her friends truly cared about the mission. The group started brainstorming how to get on Talulu's good side. Rira suggested buying her some nice accessories, but Mars and Iris quickly shot that idea down. They knew Talulu wasn't the type to be impressed by expensive gifts. She was extremely thrifty and hated wasting money on anything unnecessary. Iris even remembered getting scolded recently just for buying a weird-looking mask. Since they couldn't buy her off, they realized the only way to get her permission was to speak from the heart and show her how serious they were. Despite the nervous energy, they headed off to find her, knowing that convincing the strict protector would be their first major hurdle.